Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. It's the 10th of June, 2022. TGIF, it is Friday. My name is Kerry Holzman, and here on this YouTube channel, I like to show live computer builds, upgrades, and repairs, unscripted. Everything is real, happening in real time. I know there's some viewers out there that say, oh, I can't stand to watch how long this takes. Well, then don't get into this line of work, because in real life, what I'm showing you is how long it takes a professional to do it. And if you're not a professional, it's probably going to take you longer. So I know there's a lot of YouTube channels that do a lot of edits and a lot of polishing, and they make everything look fast and easy. And then if you go to replicate that, you may not have a similar experience. So you're kind of being lied to. And that just puts me off. I've had enough of being lied to. I'm done with all the commercials, all the advertising, all of the deception, and all of the misrepresentation. I'd like a world where things are real. And it's like going to school and saying, this class is too long. Well, then you probably shouldn't belong in school. So for us to learn, we have to go through things through a process. You're never going to learn something well in one day. When I was in automotive school, I spent an entire semester just learning internal combustion engine theory. And, it's not a class you sit in for a couple hours and then walk out and you're good to go. Things like education require a combination of time combined with experience, and preferably you start out understanding the concepts before you undergo the experience. Unfortunately, times are changing and people will jump on Google or YouTube and get just a little snippet of information without any of the prefacing or any of the following, and they don't know what they're missing. They think they know what they need to know, but how could they? Because they don't know what they don't know. And so I've made good money off of those people. I mean, I shouldn't complain. I basically bought a new car from people who got themselves in over their head, thought they could tackle something, made something 10 times worse than it was, and then paid me to fix it. And if you want to be one of those people, I'm fine with that. But if you want to be self-sufficient, I hope you'll see the value in what I'm doing and how different it is from most YouTube channels on this subject matter. So things do go slower. Things are happening in real time. Mistakes are made on camera, and those mistakes are corrected on camera as soon as they're made, usually. So you'll see how a professional actually works in the real world. Nobody's perfect. We're not machines. We're not robots. There's misjudgments and mistakes, misunderstandings, and we learn from those and we move on. They're nothing that you should be trying to be embarrassed about or ashamed of. Without mistakes, without errors, there is no learning. The difference between a professional and an amateur is that's when an amateur gives up. A professional acknowledges their mistake, corrects it, and doesn't make that same mistake again. Now, when we're dealing with computers, we're dealing with thousands of different hardware combinations, millions of variables involving the combination of motherboard, RAM, CPU, storage. How a computer might be configured by an individual user is never the same. It's always different, and it's pretty rare as a computer technician that you're going to be repetitively doing the same job over and over unless you work in a corporate environment in an IT department where everything has been documented as policy and procedure. A lot of times people who work in a corporate environment who appear to know computers really well actually don't know computers very well outside of the corporate environment where the hardware and the configurations are different. They have oftentimes no clue how to go about fixing it. So field service technician, you're kind of like a trauma surgeon in the sense that whatever rolls in that emergency room door, could be a gunshot, could be a stabbing, could be a burst a spleen, it could be a heart attack. You have to be skilled in all of those things to a certain extent to handle whatever rolls in the door, and you will rarely see the same thing twice in a row. You might see the same thing again months later, but the random nature and the urgency, because usually when people are sending computers in for repair, they need it quick, especially if they're making money from it. But even consumers, I have retired folks who do nothing all day but sit on their computer. It's all they have to entertain them. If you have to take that from them because it's broken, they're miserable. They're absolutely miserable. They don't know what to do with themselves. And so getting it back, feels good for both of us. They're happy to have it back. I'm happy to have helped them. And it's a very rewarding career. And so my goal here is to share with you the 30 plus years of professional experience I have in the industry. I still work in the industry. That's why I don't have videos every day. I'm actually doing the work. Most YouTube content creators on the subject matter are just hobbyists or enthusiasts that have no liability or accountability. There's no pressure for them, and they're not held accountable. So whatever happens only affects them, right? If they recommend a product to you that turns out to be a piece of junk, there's no recourse. You have no recourse. If I recommend a product to a paying client and that client's upset with it, there's all kinds of recourse. One, I'm probably going to hear about it from the client. Two, the client may take their business somewhere else because they will have lost all trust and faith in me. Three, I might have to buy it back from the client even if I didn't pay for it, just so I don't lose the customer. It might cost me money to keep that customer so I can earn more money in the future so that customer maintains their trust with me. None of these YouTube content creators do this. Even when I promote things like the Windows keys here, RoboForm, Acronis, all of that stuff, I personally back it the same as I would as if you were my real customer in the real world. A lot of people say, well, the internet, it's not real, so it doesn't really matter. Well, it's as real as you want it to be. If your attitude is to dismiss something of vital importance, then it's not vitally important to you, is it? And nobody can make it vitally important to you. If a doctor tells you, you better stop smoking, or you better start exercising, or you better be careful, and you ignore that doctor, that is your choice, it's your attitude. And I can't help your attitude. There's nothing I can do about that. But if you're somebody who wants to be more self-sufficient, or you want a better understanding of how computers work, or what it might be like to enter into the field of IT, well, I'm here to show you what that's like, completely unfiltered. So I don't know really any other channel on YouTube that does this, and that's why I do it. If there were other channels doing this, I wouldn't really feel the need. So I feel like there's this whole major section of IT where money is made, where you can have a career that isn't really discussed very much on YouTube. And IT is hurting for workers, hurting. There's always been talk of computers going away, or desktop computers going away. Not in our lifetimes, friends, not in our lifetimes. What we have are people writing articles for clickbait, or we have people outside of the industry who one day they write an article on cars, the next day they write an article on the IT industry. They don't have any clue what they're talking about. Or we have jaded individuals with bad attitudes talking about how it's a terrible industry and it's dying. Well, from their perspective, it's dying because nobody wants to hire a person like that. But if you're eager and you're willing, you have the enthusiasm, you can make a lot of money in this career and receive a lot of fulfillment. Obviously, I make these videos because of how I feel about it. It's very passionate, and I feel very lucky to be able to do what I do, because if I wasn't doing this, I'd be working out in that 110-degree weather working on cars, getting all greasy and dirty. And at the end of the day, those are all turning into computers. I'd turn around and be a computer technician in a matter of time when everything's electric. Even to this day, you still have these $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 OBD2 diagnostic computers that you plug into the car, and you can reprogram the engine management computer and all this other stuff that even mechanics are becoming computer techs. Even doctors are having robotics and things like that, all becoming computer techs. Somebody at the hospital has to keep all that electronic equipment running. I don't know if you understand all that, but all those things that are beeping and the lights that are blinking, somebody's paid to maintain that stuff, and that's good money, and it's a very rewarding job. It can be very high pressure though, but with the pressure comes higher pay. You want low pressure, you get low pay. So keep that in mind if you're kind of thinking about a career. Otherwise, if you're just looking to learn more about your computer, or thinking about building one or upgrading what you have, you are in the right place, and welcome in. I talk a lot. My videos run for a while. I've got 8 million words I want to share with you. I want millions of ideas I want to convey with you. And so I fire information out quickly. If there's something I haven't made clear, please ask me to be clearer about it in the chat room. If I see it, I'll address it. If you have questions, please ask in the chat. If I don't have the answer, we have so many friendly chat room participants that are very knowledgeable, some more knowledgeable than me, and they are all friendly and supportive and will provide you what they believe is the answer you're looking for with the best of intentions. Nobody's going to pull your leg. Nobody's going to pull a practical joke. If they do, I boot them out of here. That'll only happen once. If you're shy, if you're not very talkative, make an exception. Come on in the chat room, say hello. That's all I ask. Just say hello. Otherwise, why don't you watch TV? The whole point of this being live and on YouTube is that we can interact with each other. If we're not going to interact with each other, watch TV. The people you watch on TV will never, ever acknowledge you. Very rarely will you ever get a response from anybody on the television, right? Even if you write them a letter, reach out to them on Twitter, you will be very unlikely to get an actor or a celebrity to respond to you. Here, it's different. We're all equal as long as we're kind. That's the only requirement, all right? Now, let me get started by saying thank you to all of the supporters. The financial, you'll see as the chat room's going by, you're going to see contributions coming in. This isn't a telethon. I'm not out here asking for contributions. However, when contributions are made, I always take a moment to say thank you. Some viewers watch that like I'm a tech busker, but I consider them to be like tips. I don't expect them, but I appreciate them when people are kind enough and thoughtful enough to do that. All the money that comes into the YouTube channel goes back into all of the expenses I have here and will continue to have as I try to make more videos and more topics. All the hardware you'll see is all paid for by me, usually using money that's contributed by the viewers. If I took sponsorship from Gigabyte or if I took sponsorship from Intel, guess what? Then I would have to say what they want me to say. Anytime you watch those big tech channels, the big ones, I'm not going to name names, but you're essentially watching infomercials. The videos where they're talking about a specific product, you may not be aware of this, but what's most likely happening is they're being paid to talk about that specific product. It wasn't their idea. The manufacturer says, you have a big audience that's the kind of audience that would buy our product. How much would you charge us to talk about this product? And you have to air it on this day, and you have to submit what you're going to air to us so we can control it. We want to make sure you're not saying anything we don't want you to say, and we want to make sure you are saying things we do want you to say, and you will agree that you will adapt and adjust your video that you submit to us and adjust it until we approve it before you air it. And in exchange for that, we're going to give you this chunk of money. Do you see that happening here? Everything here is real. If I have an opinion, I am not required to hold my tongue, and I'm not required to mention or say anything about the product that the manufacturer wants me to. Gigabyte doesn't even know my name. I used to work at Intel, and they don't even know my name. So I'm just a real guy turning a camera on. That's all this is. And if I like something, it's because I like it. And if I don't like something, it's because I don't like it. There's nothing influencing my decision other than would I sell this to a customer in my real life business. So when you see the parts that I select, unless I state otherwise, I recommend those parts. These are parts that I would sell to a customer knowing I would be held fully accountable and responsible for the entire warranty period. And if the product fails, any of the products that make up a computer, power supply, RAM, storage, motherboard, what have you, customers don't know what all that stuff is. They don't know what an ASUS is. They don't know what a motherboard is. All they know is they bought a computer from Carrie, that computer broke, and even if I fix it at my own expense, which I'm required to for the warranty, they still may never buy a computer from me because they will have perhaps lost confidence. Even though it wasn't my fault, sometimes parts go bad. But if too many parts go bad, and I'm doing too many warranty repairs, I couldn't stay in business. So the fact that I've been in business, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, my business over 20 years, I think that goes to show I must be doing something right, no matter how skeptical and jaded and how manipulated you think the world is, or YouTube is, with content creators. This one, everything you see is real. I can't force you to believe it, and if you choose not to believe it, it really doesn't change anything in my world one way or another. But we have so many very kind and generous people in the community. I hope that if you jump in the chat room and you at least say hello, you'll see that nobody's judging you. Everybody's friendly. They're only going to say hello back, and maybe you'll want to come back just to be a part of this amazing community. Maybe you don't like me. Maybe you don't care for my style, but maybe you develop real friendships in that chat room and you come only for that, because I know I would. And that's the beauty of being live and on YouTube. You'll never get this on the television, and you likely will never get it in person, not to a group this big. So I hope you'll take advantage. If you've never jumped in the chat room before, try it. Give it a shot. Just say hello. That's all you have to do. Speaking of which, some contributions had come in, and I just want to say thank you to the people that are leaving tips, if you will. And let me take a quick look at my viewer activity here. Here it is. Roy Hale just became a member. Roy, welcome into the Tech Club. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Peter Laycock kicked us off with a 50-pound contribution. Peter says, good evening, Carrie, and everyone in the chat from Edinburgh, Bonnie, Scotland. Peter's very generous. What a super guy. He also sent an Amazon gift card, so I get speechless with Peter because his generosity is very uncommon, and I appreciate him very much. I consider him to be a real friend because he looks out after me, and you know, I just want people to be nice. When someone's looking out after me, I've never met him face to face. That's so unusual on the internet. So I can't say enough thank you to Peter. Davis Parsons contributes $50. Wow. He says, I sneaking in and listening while at work. Thank you so much, Davis. Davis Parsons. I think I might have said David. Davis, thank you. That's a very generous contribution. I appreciate you. Richard Angeline contributed $10 a few minutes ago. He says, I love this show. Well, we love you, Richard Angeline. We love the community. Members like you that are put your money where your mouth is really help for me to be able to have a variety of content, so I'm not a mouthpiece for a manufacturer taking sponsorship money. I do that on Amazon though, but I don't do that here. Robert Katina with a €5 contribution says, Carrie, it's nice to see you again. Thank you, Robert. I'd say it's nice to see you, but I have no idea what you look like. Larry Wood contributes $20. Right on, Larry. Thank you for that. Mark Gaines became a member for 2 months. Awesome. Awesome. Again, I want to thank you guys for becoming members, and there will be members-only videos and members-only content. I'm trying to get, I keep saying I'm trying to get caught up. The good news is the amount of stuff that's been coming in lately has been trickling in. It hasn't been as busy. So I'm focusing on getting stuff out. I've got, I think, somewhere around 30 computers I need to get out, and this is going to be one of them. This is obviously an older board, a B460 board, so it's from about 2 years ago. And it's a 10th generation. The chip is a socket 1200, 10th gen i5 10400. The reason for this is I'm thinking I want to put together a computer for $500. I get a lot of people who just don't have any money, and coming up with $500 is a tough thing for them, and it's hard to sell them anything that I want to warranty and stand behind and represent the kind of work I do at $500. If I sell you something that cheap, it may not be at my level of performance, quietness, reliability that I demand, because it's my reputation on the line. This will, and the only reason I can get it at around the $500 price point is we're going to use a used Samsung 512 NVMe drive that was sent in from a viewer. We're going to use the cheapest RAM on the market, this OLOY 16 gigs. We're not going with an expensive CPU. This is just an i5 10400 with its own heatsink, so we're going to use the stock fan. The motherboard was probably $100 when I bought it, and it's been sitting here for a while. And then I bought a couple of Corsair 110Q cases looking for a $200 alternative. Well, it turns out I don't need a $200 alternative. Now, what am I going to do with these 110Q cases I got stuck with? So I'm willing to lose a little money, and it's a nice business style case, no window, no RGB, and it's going to make a nice no frills, reliable, fast, quiet computer, better than any other $500 computer you can buy. Prove me wrong. Show me a $500 computer that beats these specs. So we'll also pair it with a Aries Game 500-watt power supply. It's one of the cheapest power supplies you can buy, but it still meets my requirements. So far, I haven't had a lot of years of experience, just a few months of experience with this new brand, but they've been impressing me. And I'm going to throw one of those in there, and we're going to keep that price down around $500. And if you're interested in buying it, you need to reach out to me at my email address and let me know you want to buy it. I can only ship within the United States. So shipping will cost me probably about $100, but I'll even pay for the shipping. So I'm going to lose money on this, but if it's going to one of my viewers, that's just part of the benefit of being a part of the community. And you can have something you saw built on the channel in your home, and you can come into the chat room and nothing will hold you back from saying what you honestly think about it. So if you buy a computer from me, I can't stop you from coming in. Well, I won't stop you. I won't stop you from coming into the chat room and saying, I regret buying it. I don't like this about it, or I don't like that about it. Now, nobody's ever done it, but hey, you could be the first. I can take it. What I don't like taking is criticism from people who've never invested anything, right? They never bought a computer from me. They've never contributed to the channel. Those are if there's a nasty individual online or in my chat room, it's those people. Those are the worst people. The ones who complain the loudest, the ones who cry the most, are the people who've never given anything. So I try to just make you aware, stay away from those people. They're just outsiders, and they choose not to be a part of this community. They choose to demonize me. I don't know why they do it. There's a mental health issue going on, and they just feel better demonizing, making somebody, maybe they feel bad about themselves and they want to reflect that onto somebody else. It's poisonous, it's toxic. But I can assure you, the vast majority of people, all these people you see in blue, all the people that have bought computers from me, many come back and buy another computer from me. Madi Yoel in the chat, he's bought 4 computers from me. That's the greatest compliment I can get, is somebody coming back and buying another. Mortant, who you'll see in the chat room, he's bought 2 computers from me. This gentleman named Jeff has bought 2 computers from me. That is the best compliment I can get as a system builder, is when a customer says, I like it so much, I want another one. Madi wants another one, but he has nothing, he doesn't need it, he just wants it. Which, that's just the ultimate compliment, and it just flatters me and tickles me. And that's my goal. That's how I've been able to stay in business, right? Ideally, you're gonna like the computer so much, you're gonna tell your friends about it, you'll give me free referrals, and you will want to buy another one and maybe step it up to something even more powerful next time. Also, before the video started, before today's video started, I had a couple contributions, and I want to give a shout out to Luke Greenia out in Vermont. Luke's a frequent contributor here, and I appreciate you so much, Luke. And also from Colin Longstaff. Thank you to Colin. I know Colin said he's having some trouble coming into the chat room. You have to be on. The only time the chat room is available for you to participate in is when I'm actually live. Right now it is Friday, June the 10th. It's 1:25 in the afternoon on Pacific time. So if you're watching this video on another day or later at night, then you're watching a replay. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't say replay. They should, but you're just gonna have to look at the date and time and figure it out. If you're watching this when it's actually live, you should be able to jump into the chat room if you're a subscriber, and certainly if you're a member. So thank you to those folks, and of course I mentioned Peter Lycock and Madi Yoel. Don Dry, again with another $10 contribution, sends a $10 Amazon gift card. He said, thanks for adding to our knowledge and understanding of technology. Right on. David McGurran sent $11.99, and he says, have fun in tonight's stream. So I appreciate the contributions, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the support. That's what motivates me to make more videos more often. It's not about the money, but the money has to pay for the parts, the rent, the electricity, the cameras, the microphone, the batteries, the memory card, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, I'm not out here ringing a bell for money. It really bothers me when some viewers are so negative and can't see the good in the world that they have to turn everything bad. But when people are offering it, thank you, right? That's all it's about. And I'll do my best to make sure that I take care of the people who are taking care of me. You know, when somebody emails me or somebody wants technical support, there's hundreds of people that want technical support. I don't know who they are. But if you're somebody that's been a regular in the chat room, if you're blue or you're a member, I'm certainly motivated to answer your question and help you out to the best of my ability. And you know, if there's 20 people all asking for help, how do you determine who to answer first? If I recognize their name, that's the first one I'm going to. If I've never heard from you before, I don't know who you are, I likely won't answer you because I don't have enough time to answer everybody. So that's the situation I'm in. But you can ask whatever you want in the chat room, and even if I don't see it, other chat room participants are very, very knowledgeable and will be more than happy to help you. This is a very supportive community, and we'd love to see it grow with more like-minded individuals. It doesn't matter your age or your religion. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your race. None of that matters. Just don't be a jerk. You're welcome in. All right. Now let's get started. This is a B460 HD3. I was using these boards because they're no frills. You basically get a $100 motherboard. Forget all the RGB nonsense. Forget all the overclocking nonsense. If you're serious and you want a good machine, you want to build it and be done with it. This was what I was using. Now I'm using the B560s, and even those are hard to get right now. And I've only done one 12th gen build because who cares? They're not really that much different. And you know, you get a little performance gain depending on how you're using it, but a significant price increase. So to me, there's no good value for the dollar in the 12th gen. The value for dollar is in the 11th gen, and then of course what I have left over with the 10th gen. The 11600K is a very inexpensive chip, a little over $200, and its performance is like 75–80% of the 12900K. That's $600. So each time you go a little bit faster, just like with a car and horsepower, your value to dollar starts issuing diminishing returns. If you have a car that's 300 horsepower and you want a car that's 600 horsepower, expect to pay twice as much. And if you want to go from 600 horsepower to 750 or 800, you'll spend another 50% just to get that 15% increase. So for people that have that kind of money and demand that kind of power, good for them. That's hard to maintain a business selling to those people. They're very picky, they're very demanding, and they also don't want to part with their cash. They still want a bargain, even though they're the ones that the companies make the most money from. The companies selling the Z motherboards, the companies selling the RGB, they make more profit on those products than they do from a product like this. And it's not that you're getting that value back. You're getting a little bit of value for a lot more money. So I'm trying to find the best value. I still do RGB stuff like this over here, but I prefer not to. It's just very labor intensive. It's great if you're a home user or hobbyist and it's like something to do. But for me, I don't have a shortage of things to do. So if we're trying to get the price at 500, we got to get rid of all the stuff that's not necessary. And if I don't want it to ruin my reputation and I don't want it to, you know, be a support nightmare, it still has to have a minimum level of quality regarding performance and reliability. Told you I talked a lot. Okay, brand new motherboard, never even been taken out of the box before. Sometimes people want to know how often do I get dead on arrival parts or DOA parts. Well, when I show everything on this channel, for the most part, it's all live. I'm unboxing things for the very first time. I'm experiencing it for the first time just like you are. There's no preparation, there's no rehearsal, and I don't do any homework because I have over 30 years of experience. I shouldn't have to. I should be able to figure out whatever I need to figure out because that's how it is in the real world. If I go to a client's location as a field service technician, they likely have a computer I've never seen before, and they likely have a problem I've never seen before. And if you're sitting there Googling while the customer's looking, the customer's gonna go, what the hell am I paying you for? I could have done that. I thought you knew what you were doing. I could have Googled. So as they say, never show the customer how the sausage is made. If you want to Google something, you need to do it discreetly. Go take your phone and step outside for a minute. Don't let the customer know you're doing that. And me personally, there are times when I do it, but I much prefer to just figure things out on my own. The longer it takes you to figure it out, though, you may not be able to bill the customer for that time. So it could affect how much money you're able to make in a day. It's 8 hours in a working day. If you spend 4 hours between traveling to and from a client's location and then being at the client location, and you bill the client for 1 hour, so 1 hour, let's say it's $125, you've got 4 hours into it. What did you really make? You made about 30 bucks an hour. And when the government takes their 1/3, self-employed people pay the highest income taxes of any other people in the United States. So you got to get real creative with your deductions. And you take that 125, chop 1/3 of it right off. Give that to the government. Now, how much money did you make? So it's important that you're quick, but you're not so quick that you have to come back and do it again because you didn't do it right. Now you just lost even more money because the customer's not going to pay you again, right? That you should have done it right the first time. So there's a lot of pressure, but there's a lot of money that can be made. Likewise, if you can get customers to drop computers off to you, and you can work on 2 or 3 at the same time, and you're getting 125 from each computer. So, well, this one's virus scanning, and this one is doing some other, lengthy process, downloading updates, and then you got another one over here, and you're doing something over here. Then you come back over here and, have it do the next thing, and then have this one do the next thing, and then this one's done, and you put it aside, you grab another one, and in a day, let's say you can get through 6 or 7 of those at $125 a piece. I'd say that's a pretty good day for one person, don't you? So you can see it's whatever you make it out to be, and the potential of earning is pretty much on you being able to find the work, and then you being able to do the work. The faster you get it done, the sooner you can get another computer on the bench, help another customer, and earn some money. So when people, they want to sit there and chit chat with me, they went, hey, let's hang out sometime. Hey, I'll be in town, let's go to dinner. You don't realize you're pulling me away from making money. And if I don't have any work, that's obviously not pulling me away from making any money. But the bottom line is I've got 30 computers here waiting for me. And the reason they continue to wait is if any time my phone rings from my real business, that's a customer with money calling. Those 30 computers don't have customers. They're just projects I made for YouTube, and I just never finished them. And then once I finish them, I can sell them, turn that back into cash, so I can continue more new projects. As you can imagine, it's very busy. Not to mention, I got to deal with yard work and laundry and dishes and eating and all the other things that everybody has to do. I don't have anybody to do that for me. As a result, from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to bed, I am almost always doing something. And the reason I'm doing it is for one of 2 reasons. Well, one of 3. One, I'm trying to help somebody. That's my primary thing, is let me help somebody. 2, I'm earning money. That's number 2. Helping people's first, earning money's second. I probably have that backwards, but that's just how I am. And third, because I have so many computers, and this may be hard for you to fathom, it's a little claustrophobic in this place because I have to walk around all of these computers. And if I can get them out the door, I'm going to have all this freedom, all this free space. And it's been like this for so long. You know, if it's like this for a little while, it's not a big deal. But when it gets like this for 2 years, it's kind of depressing and overwhelming to wake up to it every day and see it every day. So for me to get it out, you know, that's my third reason, is I can, like if I look around here and there's only 1 or 2 computers or 0 computers, that would be so great. But for many of you, you think, oh my gosh, that would be scary. How would I earn any money? I don't have that problem. Luckily for me, there's a lot for me to do, not just involving computers. So I have a lot of other projects I've got going on off on the side, and you know, I'll try and watch some TV to try and wind down at the end of the night, but mostly I'll get on YouTube because I don't have the patience to sit for an hour and you know, watch. It's got to be a pretty extraordinary movie for me to sit down and you know, commit 2 hours to something. So I'll generally, you know, go through YouTube. I'll look at videos on cars. I look at videos on animals, and I'm trying to think. There's like handyman hack tools and tricks and tips, life hacks. I love stuff like that, and so I get my fill of that. I see the news every day. I probably shouldn't, but I'll look at the news every day. It's just always depressing. It's always terrible. And before you know it, you know, my day is over. It feels like I just woke up and I've been up, you know, 16 hours. It's like, oh, I better start going to bed. And then it's hard to go to bed because I'm always go, go, go. So I have to listen to some like ethereal new age music or something very softly in the background, and be in a completely dark room and try to calm my mind so that I can finally sleep. And as you can imagine, it's difficult because as soon as I wake up again, I'm right back at it day after day. I've been desperately, this last year, been trying to take off weekends, and I've been doing a pretty good job at it. And the problem is, if you stop that pattern, it's harder to get started again. You know, it's like if you go to the gym every day and then you stop going, it doesn't feel right. You're like, oh, I didn't go to the gym today. It doesn't feel right. And if you don't go to the gym for 4 or 5 days, yeah, I don't need it. It's like you could just never go again. So there's a balance to taking some time off, but not too much time. You take too much time off, you're just not going to want to go back to work. And that seems like a waste of life to me. There's got to be something I can do. Even if it's sitting at a keyboard writing a novel, I got to have a purpose for being here, and I will create one if I have to. So that's my mentality. And you know, I grew up very shy. I grew up not looking anybody in the eye, very low self-esteem. Nobody looked out for me. Nobody helped me. Woe is me, you know. But it was tough, and it was very difficult, and I always felt like I wasn't good enough, and I didn't know why. And you know, what makes the cool kids cool? I didn't understand. Why are they cool and I'm not cool? Is it, you know, who decides that? And it was pretty lonely for a long time in those teenage years, and even in my early 20s, until I sort of started to figure things out. But I had to figure them out on my own. One person helped me. One person helped me. And that help came much, much later. And the reason I mention it is you might relate to that. And you need to know, first of all, you're not alone, and you will always continue to grow. I hope. The person I was 10 years ago, if you go back 10 years and look at my videos, I'm not that same guy anymore. If you go back 10 years before that, if you go back 10 years before that, not that my videos go any further back than 10 years, they go back about 12 years. If you think about when you were 12 to when you were 16, and you probably thought when you were 16, gosh, I was a dumb kid when I was 12, and that seemed like a long time to you. Then you turn 21 and you think, I was such a dumb kid at 16. Then you're in your 30s and you think, gosh, I was an idiot when I was in my 20s. Well, this pretty much doesn't stop. And if anything, if you have low self-esteem, as I did, I look back at the young version of myself and I find it hard to believe that it's me. Like someone showed me an old picture of myself and I was like, who's that? That's you. And I'm looking at the shirt and I'm looking at the watch and the ring I was in. That's how I knew it was me. I never looked like that. Yeah, you did. That's the way we knew you. Well, damn, I was a good-looking kid. Why did I feel so low about myself? I wish I looked that good now. So wouldn't it be great if we could gain that self-confidence rather than, at that time, rather than years later? I'm sure I'll look back 10 years from now at this video and I'll say, damn, I was so much younger and thinner than I am. You know what I mean? I didn't think I was that attractive and I'm losing my hair and I'm getting a belly. But then 10 years from now, I might look at that and go, damn, that was pretty good for 53 years old. So what I'm saying is if you have a low self-esteem, low self-confidence today, when you look back on it, more than likely, you're going to think, why? What reason did I have? Today I've got a reason. It's always about today, right? We're always down about today. And you look back and you're like, man, I should have been confident. I shouldn't have had any self-esteem issues. There was no reason physically by how I looked that would justify that. Like if there was something about me, maybe I didn't bathe, maybe I didn't have good hygiene, maybe I stunk so people didn't want to be around me. Well, yeah, that makes sense. But if you're clean and, you're nice, you take care of yourself, why would you have low self-esteem? It's not justifiable. So I realize I can't fix this issue for other people, but I hope if you were in that category that it's all in your head. It's all in your head. And once you figure that out, that's the secret. And the secret is to force yourself to change your thinking. And it's hard because it's like a habit. If you're just doing something all the time, you're not even realizing you're doing it. Habits can be very difficult to break, but the best way to break a habit is to force yourself when you're aware, like if you're beating yourself up about something, stop it. And instead counter it with something nice about yourself. And if you catch yourself being hard on yourself, stop and say, now wait a minute, is there anything good about me? Of course there is. Well, why don't you focus on that? And you have to keep reminding yourself to do this until eventually that becomes your new habit. It takes practice and it takes balance. If you swing it too far to the other side, people are going to think you're cocky, arrogant, simply because you gained your confidence. And nothing, if you got shaky confidence and somebody smacks you down, it's very discouraging to get back up again. But you have to. Maybe you just need to dial it back just a little bit. Maybe you just overcorrected. All right? But don't let others take away your self-confidence. Don't let others tell you what your value is. Because I was convinced all those years ago I had no value, zero value. And do you know how dangerous a person is that has nothing to lose? Somebody who doesn't care if they're alive or dead? That is a dangerous person. Well, you do have something to lose, and you are a good person, and you do have values. The hard part is getting you to believe it. And don't worry what anybody else thinks. They don't matter. Unless it's a partner in a relationship, in which case, that's up to you to decide if that partner is good for you or not. So anyway, sometimes we get into a little bit of philosophy, and the reason I do that is it ties into this career. Because if you go into this career with a bad attitude, or if you're somebody who just gets frustrated and gives up easily, this is not the job for you. If you enjoy challenges, and you know one way or another, I'm going to find the fix for this. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if I've got to ask somebody for help, but I'm going to see this through. That's how you grow and you learn. No shame in asking for help. No shame in it whatsoever. Just don't ask somebody to do it for you. In other words, if I had a computer problem, let's just say, for example, that I couldn't figure out, and I was frustrated and ran out of ideas, which has never ever happened. But let's just say that happens. That I'm going to contact somebody, and maybe a local computer shop if I don't know anybody. And I'm going to say, hey, I've got this computer problem. I'm sort of an amateur tech. I'm trying to learn. If I pay you to fix this for me, can I watch? Or would you at the very least, once you get it figured out, tell me in detail how you figured it out so I can learn? And if they say no, call somebody else. Because if you're going to pay somebody else to figure it out for you, what you need to pay for is the education, not the repair. You need to pay for that knowledge. And now you're stronger than you were. Now you have information you never had before. This makes you more valuable in your career. And that's no different than paying money to go to school, except it's a lot cheaper. So, if you have that mindset, if you have that attitude, one way or another, this is getting fixed, even if I have to pay somebody to do it. But if I pay somebody to do it, I want to watch how they do it, or I want them to tell me exactly how they figured it out, so I get my money's worth. And then the computer's done, and don't let it discourage you from saying, oh, I don't want to do this because what if it happens again? I can't afford to keep paying somebody to fix it for me. Don't do that. You got to keep at it. And eventually, you won't have to do that ever again. So I share all this information with you because when I was growing up, there was nobody to share that information with me. None of the advice I got from my father was any good to me. My father was a teenager in the 1950s, and he thinks that was the best time to be alive. I look back at the 50s, and it looks horrific. I'm so glad I wasn't around in that time, or the 60s for that matter. So the advice my father was giving me would probably have been good if we were still living in the 1950s. And my father's inability or unwillingness to adapt his advice and experience to the way things were when I was struggling in the 1980s was non-existent. He just didn't. As far as he was concerned, nothing has changed. So it was like, well, I can't talk to him about anything because he just refuses to acknowledge the change in how the culture shift, for example. And in his generation, the 50s was the first time where teenagers had any value as far as marketing goes, as far as, there weren't really television shows for teenagers. There weren't really television shows for children. Children were to be seen and not heard. And it was the 1950s where teenagers suddenly started having a voice. And in my generation, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, it was about equal rights for minorities and women. I'm a big proponent of that. That's the world I was born into. We should all be the same. My dad wasn't born into that world. His dad, most certainly. His dad, I barely knew my grandfather, but my grandfather worked loading and unloading railroad cars in Detroit, Michigan. That's some hard, back-breaking work. They didn't have all the, forklift. Well, they probably had something, but they didn't have all the tools and such that enable workers today to not have to be so, physical, the physical labor. So I'm told when my grandfather came home from work, he lived in a little tiny house with his wife. She bought his clothes. She did not have a driver's license ever in her life. When my father turned 16, his mother told him she would buy him a car under the condition that he would drive her to work or to where she needed to go. And he agreed, so she bought the car. So in her entire lifetime, she never learned how to drive, nor was she interested. I asked my father, do you remember when your father brought home the first television set or color TV? And my father grinned at me and he said, son, my father didn't do that. It would have been my mother who did it. When my father got home from work, he's done. It was it. And I'm giving this to you as a frame of mind and how our culture has changed. My grandmother fed him, clothed him, shopped for him. She didn't drive. When my grandmother died, I wasn't born yet. My mother went over to my grandfather's house because he only lived a couple blocks away, and she would cook for him. He didn't know how to cook for himself and wasn't going to. That's a woman's job. So my mother went over there and was cooking for him, thinking, she's helping him out. And he scolded her for not making something right. Like he yelled at her. So I wouldn't want to be a part of that generation. That doesn't sound like anything I want to be a part of. It sounds terrible. He wasn't a bad guy, but it was just the culture. And then my father has his culture. I have my culture. Kids today, they have their culture, right? So we have ultimately about 4 generations still living of people that were perhaps born in the 1900s, 1910s, 1920s. Folks like my father, born in the 40s, the baby boomers. Folks like myself, born in the 60s and early 70s. And then you have a generation born in the 90s. You also have a generation born today that are still babies. So I guess that's 5 generations coexisting with completely different attitudes towards life. So there's a lot of conflict that's happening. There's a lot of changes in values, what people used to do and what people do today. And so what I'm trying to do when I offer the advice is I'm trying to keep all that in mind. My advice is what I experienced as a teenager in the 1980s, and that's not the world anymore. But people are still people. There's certain behaviors that are always going to be there. There's always been bullies. There's always going to be bullies. There's always people who take advantage. There's always people to tell you you're nothing. You're worthless. You won't amount to anything. That's the laziest thing anybody could ever do, is prophesize your failure. So don't look to other people for approval unless they're customers or people who are paying you. It hurts if you're not getting approval from your parents. And it can hurt if you're not getting approval from complete strangers. But when you can let that go, and I can't tell you how, you just have to practice. And you realize at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. You have to live with the consequences of your decisions and your actions. None of these other people do. So do what's good for you, and it doesn't matter if people don't like it. If that's what makes you happy, what you'll do is you'll draw other people who have a similar interest in the thing that makes you happy, and you'll hang around those people more. That's when you're going to start to feel like you fit in, that you have value, that you belong. And that's what I love about this community. If we had a community like this when I was a teenager, I bet you I could have been a lot more successful and been so a lot younger. So it's difficult when you're in that situation, but you're not alone. You're not the first one. You're not the last one. And at the end of the day, the only person who can help you is you. And if you don't want to help yourself, there's nothing anybody can do. And sometimes something as simple as building a computer, it can do amazing things for your self-confidence. You put something together, you created something, you pieced it together, you picked the motherboard, you picked the RAM, you picked the CPU, you picked the cooler, you picked the storage, you picked the case, you picked the power supply, you picked the operating system, you put it all together and it works. That's very addictive. It's like a drug. Your brain releases an endorphin and it feels really, really good. And it's something you can do all by yourself and you don't need anybody's permission. You don't need anybody's approval. You did it on your own and the reward is all yours. And if you're thinking, Carrie said I could get paid to do this, so I can feel good about it and make money? Well, do understand there are liabilities and consequences. Not consequences, rather, there are liabilities and responsibilities that come along with getting paid. And the more responsible, the higher the responsibility is, the more you take on, the more money you make. So for example, if you take on managing all the computers and networking and antivirus and something for a company, that's going to pay you really well. But that company might call you at any given time during any given day, say, hey, we need you here, we have a problem. And they're not doing it to harass you, they're doing it because they need you. And so they expect you to drop what you're doing and get over there, fix their problem, and then you can go back to doing what you were doing. That can be a little stressful, but you get paid more for it. So, at the end of the day, computers ultimately are what kept me from getting any further depressed. So in the 80s, I was using computers long before most people had one, and people would often ask, why do you have a computer? What do you use that for, right? And I knew computers were the future, but I couldn't tell you why. I just knew it. And I really enjoyed my time on the computer. It never bullied me, you know. And I built up my own self-esteem and my own self-confidence with the computer, but not necessarily with people. And I think now I overcompensate for it. But my gosh, how I wish there was somebody like this, like I am today, that could have been sort of a guiding light, somebody to just not tell me what to do, but to encourage me to do it, whatever that thing is, and maybe offer me a little hand now and again. But I wouldn't want to rely on them, you understand? But to have nobody, please know that you're always welcome in the chat room, and our community is amazing, and they're not going to judge you unless you're rude, unless you're vulgar. Come in and say hello. Try it. I think you're going to like it. And I think the rest of us are going to like it too. It's very reciprocal. All right, so enough about life philosophy and attitude. This is going to be a very easy build. I guess I'll start by putting the CPU in first. Again, if you have any questions in the chat, please ask away. Like to focus on the technical stuff, but ask what you will, and we'll do our best to provide answers for you. I know I haven't really been paying much attention to the chat. Let me just do a real quick scroll through to see if I've missed any questions. If you've asked more than 5 minutes ago, you're going to have to ask again because I didn't see it. Hey, speak of the devil, there's Madi Yoel. Contributes $20. He says, hey, Carrie, in chat, build good PCs, people, buy. You know, look, when I'm selling these computers that you see here, I really don't make any money on them. Sometimes I lose money on them, but I make money on the video. Channel Zero says, my question is, can I swap my spanner for a screwdriver? I think it'd be more useful. So we don't really use the term spanner here in the United States, but I'm assuming what you mean by a spanner is a wrench. And I think that's a joke. I don't know what you mean by that. Let's see. Roger Hall says, having a good day in Oklahoma. It's sunny after a week of steady rain. Greetings to all in the chat. Oh, I wish we had some rain. It is a hot one today. And it's going to be through September. Tim Teal says, Carrie, when you set up a new laptop with Windows 11, then there's no way to turn off the Wi-Fi. How do you get past the login? I've set up a couple, and I'm going to do one now. Ooh. Okay, well, you can unplug your router. Just take your router offline. And then when Windows tries to connect, it'll say it can't. And then the option to create the local account should appear. Create the local account, and then go turn your router back on. Frankie McAvoy says, Carrie, can you explain the following error messages? Previous fan failure, hard drive fan failure, power button cable failure, front I/O cable failure, press F1 to continue. Frankie, these are not standard error messages. They appear to be proprietary error messages from a big brand like Dell or HP or Acer or Asus. That isn't a Windows error, nor is it a standard BIOS error. What you're seeing there is unique to that specific motherboard of whatever you're working on. So you'd have to say, you know, what is it that you're working on, a desktop or a laptop? What's the make and model of the motherboard? When did the problem start? That's not, in 30 plus years of doing this, I've never heard of those error messages. Never in my life. I've never heard of a hard drive fan error. I don't even know what a hard drive fan is. So that I don't know. But if anybody in the chat has any ideas, please let Frankie know what you're thinking. John Paul Bacon says, keep talking all you want. I like to learn about technology and computers. Thank you, John. You can imagine if you went, do you remember going to school? Your teacher probably talked throughout most of the class. That's what teachers do. That's how we learn. We convey information. So I appreciate that. Prasoon Suresh contributes £4.49. Thank you, Prasoon. Make sure Prasoon is blue in here. I appreciate you. Sean says, good afternoon. Welcome in, Sean. Catherine Anna Hauserman joins us. Welcome in, Catherine. Good to see you as always. Cerise says, I actually do not enjoy building computers. It took me forever trying to figure out what had to go where as far as cabling, but I'm enjoying the hell out of the completed build. I feel that way about writing. When I wrote my book, The Healthy PC, torture. But having written it, I'm very proud of it. Bikeman says, I bought the Be Quiet Pure Rock 2 cooler, but despite it looking easy to install online, it ended up not. So I spent more at a local shop to get a cooler that they would install. One of those Be Quiet coolers, I had a complaint about how difficult it was to install. So I don't know which one or which version that you got. Some of the coolers that Be Quiet makes are easier to install than others. Charles M says, greetings from Sweden. Welcome in. John Paul Bacon says to Suri, building a computer for the first time can be overwhelming, but once you do it and learn from it, you'll be more excited about using your computer. I think that's true. Robert wants to know how the dogs are doing. I just saw the dogs 2 days ago, and I took their picture so you guys can see them. I'll bring it up to the camera, but I have to change my my view there on the monitor. So there's Jimmy, still looks like Jimmy. And then there's Lyle with his ears back, looking at me like, where's my cookie? Yeah, they're doing good. Thank you for asking. Those are my boys. And my burglar alarm. All right, I think I am caught up. Am I caught up? No, I have a few more messages to look through here. Eugene Hidalgo says, Mr. Holzman, I'm a recent member. What does that gray color with my initial mean? That is your YouTube avatar. I think it's called an avatar. You can change that by clicking the little gear icon or going to, it should have it in the upper right corner. Click on it and go to settings, and you can change that. Just play around in the settings. You'll see there's a bunch of stuff you can change. Taco says self-confidence is great, but some people have too much. Well, I'll tell you what. I would rather be accused of being too confident than being too insecure, too shy, too needy, too clingy. No matter what you do, somebody's gonna, it's inevitable, it's human nature, unfortunately. Somebody is going to put you down. Something that you're doing that you're really proud of, someone's gonna say, oh, you're egotistical and boasting. It sucks, right? Because you do something, you achieve something. And you wanna say, wow, isn't that, look what I did, right? But there's some people that when you say that, what they hear is, look what I did, you worthless piece of junk, look how much better I am than you. Even though that's not what you said, that's what they heard. The best advice I have is if you think somebody's overconfident, if that's your attitude about them, stay away from them. And if somebody accuses you of being overconfident, stay away from them too. Most people who are overconfident, don't have suicidal thoughts. So I would rather that you were overconfident than feeling like you had no value and nobody likes you and you're not good enough. Those are very dangerous thoughts to have. And every day, we're lucky to be here, living at the times that we're living. People in the past never had it this good. Before the invention of air conditioning, before the invention of plastic. Plastic hasn't even been around that long. Imagine all the plastic in your life, from a toothbrush to a comb to garbage bags. There was no such thing as plastic, 200 years ago. Didn't exist. Probably didn't even exist. Things like Tupperware, stuff like that. That stuff didn't exist, I think, until the 20s. I might be wrong on that. But we're very, very fortunate to live in the times that we're living. And, the average size of a house for a family is more than quadrupled from, say, the 1800s, at least here in America. It's a shame for people to live in such an amazing world, all the evolution that we have the benefit from our ancestors, passing information to each generation as we grow and expand. And to live in this world with so much and yet feel like there's nothing, that's really sad. So, again, I would rather be accused of overconfidence. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Charles M. says, Dear Sir Carey, you are most wonderful. I was blessed by listening to you, and I'm very grateful for all the fine advice you always share with us. Thank you. I appreciate your kind words, and we'll make sure that you are blue in here. The people you see in blue are people that I consider to be friends, people that I consider to be kind to others, and people that I consider to be people I admire, people that I say, I look up to them. But just getting back to what I was saying, if I'm showing somebody, look at this new car I bought, and they're just like, oh, you're showing off. I'm like, well, I was trying to share my joy, but thanks for making me feel bad about this achievement that I did all on my own without any help from anybody. I just thought you'd be happy for me. And it hurts when it's somebody close to you. Like I had an employer who was like a second father to me in a lot of ways. And when I wanted to raise his rate because he started getting more and more demanding and he was taking more and more of my time and I'm just trying to grow the business, I said, I need to increase my rate. You've been paying me the same amount for 10 years. And I was going to raise the rate like 20%. And he got livid. He acted like I just stabbed him in the back. This guy was profoundly wealthy. And he got really nasty with me. And I said, you know what? Forget the 20% rate increase. I'm going to charge you exactly what I charge anybody else right now. Not 10 years ago. This is my going rate. I was discounting it for you, but now you're going to pay the same. That's how you're going to treat me? And that eventually ended up, oh, I cut that already. That eventually ended up hurting me more emotionally than it financially. What he didn't realize is by paying me so little, there wasn't a lot for me to lose by walking away. It wasn't like I was desperate and I needed anything. And after 10 years, I thought he would want to see me do well and become a self-made millionaire just like him. I thought that he would be happy to see me grow and expand and become more successful. But instead, he got spiteful. And he was making a lot of money off of me. He didn't even spend what he had. It's just a mindset. Make more, make more, make more. And when I wanted to make more, he saw that as a betrayal. And I have to tell you, man, I was never more wrong about somebody. I thought I knew him well. And so that was difficult in my head, to process that. If somebody only likes me because they're making money for me, that's basically like them. That's basically like me paying them to be my friend. I don't need friends like that. They're not real. So, anyway, iBinary says, hello, Uncle Kerry. I just gave you a thumbs up. Great words. Have a great weekend, sir. Thank you, iBinary. Jeff Ryman says, good afternoon from Las Vegas. Hey, welcome in, Jeff. Robert Jones says, my mom had 4 beautiful kids. Hey, that's not bad out of 5 though, right? I kid. Humor is very important in life. For me, it is. Bikeman says, my old Intel stock cooler with my Intel 10700 was getting up to the mid-90s to 100 degrees Celsius, depending on the task. With my Arctic Freezer 7X, it only gets up to 80 doing the same task. Also depends on the ambient room temperature. Nelson Contreras says the Amazon 11700K is at 283. That's not bad. I think the 11600K is the value processor. The Greek says, it's obvious you've overcome any challenges life threw at you, and I'm proud to know you. Well, thank you, but I can tell you that if I had help, it wouldn't have been so hard. John Gardner is talking to Stealth Mode, and he says, at 70 years old and on an income of $1,200 a month to live off of, things get thin, but I won't quit. Yeah, you just got to get creative. Charles M. says, being in Sweden, what is your local time right now compared to me, where it is, like at the time he said it was 10:49. I guess it's probably 10:14. So subtract 8 hours, and that's the time here. It's 2:15. There's my friend Dave Linovitz joining us in the chat. You could always go to Google. Hey Google, what time is it in Phoenix, Arizona? It'll tell you. Alexa, what's the temperature in Phoenix, Arizona? That's all you have to do. You can get all those answers anytime you want them. Or type it in. Cerise says, unless what you do is hurting, unless what makes you happy is hurting other people. Yeah, well, I didn't know that needed to be said, but yes, your happiness should not come from making somebody unhappy. You should be able to create your own happiness without it costing anybody anything. Agreed. Paul Garrett says he purchased $15K worth of Bitcoin yesterday, hoping it will pay off one day. I think it's just my opinion, but I think you picked a good time to buy. Bitcoin always falls, and everybody, you know, the news all talk about it. But there's over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies. So isn't it interesting that the one they talk about the most is Bitcoin? The one they say is, you know, oh, this is, look how much it dropped, and look at all these investors were wrong. It's not like Bitcoin just stops. It's not like it goes, okay, that's the value and it's done. Bitcoin's never ever going away. It'll always be around. There's no way to stop it. So it's always going to fluctuate, and we're going to go through periods where it's going to be low. That's the best time to buy it. This is what makes millionaires. When everybody's selling their stock in a company, Warren Buffett, watch the documentary on him and his attitude regarding buying stocks from companies that appear to be, you know, financially hurting. If you don't know who he is, I'd be surprised. And I figure when it comes to financial advice, I'm going to listen to him versus anybody else. But don't expect it to happen overnight. You make your investment and sit and wait. And then the hard part is when it starts to climb. Let's say Bitcoin gets back up to 60, 65, or even $70,000. Do you sell or do you hold it? Because now you will have doubled your money. And if you sell it, and you're like, look how good I did. I turned 15,000 into 30,000. But then what happens if it keeps going and gets up to 115,000? You're like, oh, I shouldn't have sold it. But what happens if it crashes again and it falls below what you paid for it? You're not making or losing any money until you sell it. So it doesn't matter what it's worth. That's just, right now, I've spent more on Bitcoin than my Bitcoin is worth. But it doesn't matter because I'm not selling it. Eventually, it'll climb back up and it'll go higher than it's ever gone before, and it's going to keep growing. I'm positive. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep growing. And I have a certain figure in my head that if my Bitcoin gets worth that, then I'm going to cash it out and use it to put on a house. I can assure you, if Bitcoin was continuing to grow as it had been, because it got up to around 70,000, I think. If it kept doing that and it was at like 90 or 100,000, I'd already be in Michigan. So it's one of the little plans I have off to the side that if that pays off, I can get there sooner. And if it doesn't pay off, it's still okay. I'm still able to pay my bills and do everything, and I'm still able to move to Michigan, just not as soon. So it's a little gamble, it's a little iron in the fire, and if it pays off, things will get better faster. If it doesn't pay off, I won't lose that much. I'm sure I could at least break even. So you just buy it and hold it. I think you've got the right idea. Watching people buy it as it's growing, they're like, oh, it's going up, I'll buy it. You already missed the best price, right? Once it's out starting to grow, you waited too long. Samuel Kowalski says, greetings from Gilbertsville. I lost the message. Katrina H. says, Carrie, you are most loved for your channel and your outlook on life. Tupperware was invented in 1946 by Silas Tupper. Can you imagine? Something we take for granted every single day didn't exist, what is that, 80 years ago? 75 years ago? Bob R. says, I don't feel very good about the world these days. Bob, that's what people have been saying since the dawn of mankind. It's just the same old thing over and over. Oh, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. But you know what? We don't have any control over that. Best you can do is make the world the place you want it to be. Have some impact on the world in a positive way. And if we all do that, it'll get better. But if we're just going to sit there and fret about it or give up, then we're going to reap what we sow. We're going to get what we give. And don't let what others do have any impact on you. If it's all negative stuff, it's bad stuff. It's not everybody. Channel Zero said, yes, I was joking about the wrench/screwdriver. Fernando wants to know if I've ever considered building a custom themed PC, like a Mustang theme or whatnot. The issue is that I'm not a hobbyist or an enthusiast. And that's very time consuming and very expensive. And while I'm doing that, I'm not helping customers and I'm not making any money and I don't need it. Who am I building it for? I have done themed builds before. I've got the tube build. Everything is tube. The speakers are tubes. Everything's tubes. I've got the spaceship build, which has got like spaceship Bluetooth speakers, and everything's very spaceship themed. But these things are very expensive and very time consuming, and I don't make any money from them. I've never sold a themed computer before, so it's not where the business is. If that's something you want to do for fun, that's great. But if it's something you want to do for a business, it'd be very hard to maintain that business, finding customers that are willing to pay that kind of money, for the amount of time you have to put into it. There's a guy named Bill Owens, O-W-E-N-S. And if you Google his name, he does custom modded cases and themes where he does what I do as far as he's building a computer, but then on top of that, he's fabricating parts and cutting into the metal and reshaping, and the work he does is absolutely amazing. And I had the privilege to talk to him one day, and I said, I'd love for you to build me something for my channel if I could afford it, but I don't know what I would have you build. I have no idea. But what he does is a piece of art. It's like a painting. There'll never be another one. That's it. Even if he built another one to match it, because they're handmade and custom fabricated, there would be some differences. And I'm sure he makes a lot of money from that, and I'm sure that I will build multiple computers and help multiple people in the amount of time it takes him to build one. That's a business model for him. That's what he does for a living. But that's got to be very difficult to find work. And Wojciech Warjal contributes 5 PLN to USD. That is a zloty from Poland. Poland zloty. I never heard of that currency before. I got to crawl out from under my rock sometimes. Thank you to, looks like Wojtek. Make sure he's blue in here. XRod666 became a member for 2 months. Right on, XRod. Thank you for joining us in the Tech Club. All I was trying to do when I started this was to get through the messages, and I haven't done anything with this build here, so hopefully I can get caught up. Ryan contributes $2 Canadian, said, I just finished work for this week. I wish I could say the same. William99 said, I was cleaning up some wires behind my TV, and when I said, just ask Alexa about the weather in Phoenix, my Echo Dot answered. So I guess it's 109 degrees Fahrenheit. That is correct. It's hot. It's miserable. I hate it. Catherine says, Poland has zloty as currency. I'm aware of that now. I knew what it was. I knew it was currency. I've never heard of zloty before. But Samuel Kowalski says, don't forget the train PC. Yeah, well, I still have that PC, or I have the case. I don't have any parts in it right now for the train build. Let me grab a cold Gatorade and we can continue the build. I'm going to step off screen here for just a minute. Okay. Alej says, don't forget about the NZXT Nuka-Cola case. I mean, that's just a case. I don't really know that that's a themed build so much as it's a themed case. I didn't have like a keyboard and a mouse and everything to match it. All right, well anyway, building this, sort of the reason I'm stalling here is I really enjoy the interaction with you guys. And building this is so simple, it's sort of mindless, a little tedious for me. That's how easy it is. If we didn't have the dialogue and interact with each other, this would already be done. I realize that, but this channel is also about, you know, being human and connecting with other humans in a positive way. All right, let's put the M.2 drive in. That's going to go down here. Maybe put the camera person to work. You guys can get a close-up shot. What do you think of that? As soon as I can find the power button for the wireless transmitter. There it is. Let me come over here. Hey, camera person.
Yes, sir?
It's time for you to go to work.
I thought you'd never ask.
I'm not asking. I'm demanding.
I'm charging extra.
Here, stand right over there for a second. We got to give that a minute to synchronize with the wireless receiver over here, and hopefully it won't cut out on us like it did last time. We'll see what happens. It's camera 3. All right, so the screen might say something about Hollyland. If you see that, that's the wireless receiver. Yeah, there it is. And it says check video source. That means it's still synchronizing with the transmitter on the camera. And that usually takes about 90 seconds, sometimes 2 minutes. And so far,
No video.
is the transmitter on? I wonder why this is taking so long. I wonder why. Is it on channel 1?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And we are on camera 3. It's the right input. The camera is on, yeah. That's not good. Oh, you know what? Maybe, well, obviously it's plugged in, otherwise it wouldn't say Hollyland on the screen. So the transmitter, or the receiver rather, is plugged in. It's got power. The transmitter on the camera is plugged in and has, oh, is it plugged in? No, it's not plugged in. So the transmitter has to plug into the HDMI output of the camcorder. And because we hardwired it last time because it was kind of acting weird for us,
Right.
I never plugged it back in. That's my bad. So the cable's just hanging there.
I should have caught that.
Yeah, you should have. What kind of camera operator? You call yourself a camera operator? You got to plug it in. All right, come on over here. And let's show everybody what we're doing here. So here's our B460 HD3 motherboard, and you can see the processor we put in. Can you zoom in on that and we can read it? Maybe back the zoom off a little bit. It should autofocus. There it is, it finally focused. So that's an i5 10400, not a 10400K. Now I'm going to put the NVMe drive in, and I'm going to do this backwards. You shouldn't do it this way, but I'm doing it so you guys at home can have a better view. So zoom in, and you'll see we have two M.2 slots. And I want to use the one closest to the top. The screws on the Gigabyte boards, they were already pre-installed. A lot of other manufacturers, you've got to look in the motherboard box. For these super teeny tiny screws, you always want to use a magnetic screwdriver. Dropping the screw, especially in carpet, it can be very difficult to locate it. So we're not going to go too far with that screw. I'll just set the screwdriver down. Now this is an NVMe drive that was sent in, I think, by David DeWitt, if I'm remembering correctly. He had it as a spare part he didn't need anymore. That's one of the ways I'm able to get this computer down at that $500 price point, by the way. Just pop that in, and then that screw just secures that into place. And don't over tighten it, just take it till it's giving you some resistance, and that's good to go. That's just how easy that is. With the RAM, we have the cheapest RAM I could find at the time, OLOY. I haven't seen a bad stick of OLOY. I don't know how it's pronounced. Each stick is 8 gigs, and we're going to use the gray slots. Let me turn this around here for you. We'll use the gray slots. There's a notch, so it only goes in. If I tried to put it in this way, it won't seat. Don't use force. Everything should slide in without resistance. And then once it slides in, you've got the notch aligned correctly. Then you got to put some pressure. Enough pressure that you'll hear it. You'll see this little lever move, and you'll hear it click. Then come over to the other side. And, you know, look, if you're a real young kid and you don't have a lot of upper arm strength, you may not have the muscles to do this. That's how much force it takes. But don't, whatever you do, don't hit it with anything. And if it's not seating easily, just double check your alignment, make sure you're in the track. If you start forcing it down and it's not in the track, you could break the socket, and that's not a warranty issue. Right? That's up to you then to never use that socket or even potentially replace the motherboard. Now, this is a bit unusual in that we have the stock cooler that we're going to use on today's build. Again, we want to keep that price down. You see there's thermal compound already pre-applied here. So we do not have to apply any thermal compound, nor should we. We don't want to blend two different thermal compounds together. That has the effect of making the either thermal compound less effective. Also, putting too much on would make the thermal compound less effective. Intel, with this heatsink, and other manufacturers that sell heatsinks that apply the thermal compound here, that's all you need. You don't need anything else. So we leave the CPU bare like it is. And with these Intel coolers, they can go on any of 4 directions, every 90 degrees. So the way that I pick how I want to install it is I look where the power cable is coming out. See the wires underneath this little clasp here. We're going to take it out of there. And it's under another clasp right there. Now we could leave it under that clasp and put it with the Intel logo facing down, or facing, it's upside down is what I meant to say. I wish they gave us the sticker and we could put it on ourselves, because most often when I put these stock coolers on, 99% of the time that Intel logo is going to be upside down. But, you know, it's just an aesthetic thing. It doesn't affect performance. On these little towers that stick up, if you look real close, you'll see there's an arrow. If you turn the little tower, that 45 degrees, in the direction of the arrow, that's for taking the heatsink off. Out of the box, these towers should be turned in the opposite direction that the arrow is pointing in. So I just want to double check and make sure they're all in the right position. We have to look for the little arrows. And in this lighting, it's really hard for me to see. Yeah, that's to the right. They should all move to the, yep. So they're all in the opposite direction of the arrow. And what that means is when I push down on the little tower, this pushes this piece of plastic down and it will lock into place. We do opposite corners, again with the thumbs, just like with the RAM. And then we take the power cable and this connector, the CPU, this fan connector is a CPU fan header. It's the only one of this color. It's also the only one we have across the top of the board. And I don't like the way this cable looks, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a little zip tie right now. This is going to be much more difficult to do after the motherboard's installed in the case. So I have so much freedom of movement with the motherboard out. This is the best time to tie up any excess slack cable. And again, I don't know why Intel has different colors on the cabling. It sure would be nice if all the cables were black. But the Corsair 110Q case we're using does not have a case window, so no one's going to see it anyway. And then just cut those pigtails off of there. Now I'll show you a bit closer. So this is what a fan header looks like on a motherboard, this piece right here. And this piece of plastic, this little wall, I don't know why this thing isn't focusing. All right, there it goes. If you look at the connector, one side of it has grooves. The other side is smooth. These grooves are going to be guided, and the reason they're guided by this plastic tab. If this plastic tab were to break off, really wouldn't make any difference. It would just be possible for us to put the connector on backwards, which things wouldn't work. They make 3-pin and 4-pin fans. Now, the CPU fan, and all CPU fans, should always be 4-pin. That gives the motherboard more granular control over the speed of the fan. And so if you look, we'll make sure that those grooves sort of hug that little plastic tab sticking up. And we push straight down. It doesn't lock in or anything. It just sits in there with some friction. And you can't put it on wrong because, well, I suppose you could. I've been off a set of pins, but it makes it really hard to push on. Now, if anything's really difficult to get in, it's probably because you're not doing it correctly, and if you use brute force on it, you might break it. So better to be safe than sorry, and have some patience. And kind of, if things aren't fitting easily, take a minute, stop, look at it, see if there's something obvious that you're missing. Now these Gigabyte motherboards, for whatever reason, they have this mounting hole. It's very common on Gigabyte boards, and I've never seen a manufacturer have a mounting hole right here. Usually it's right about here. This motherboard isn't long enough or wide enough for that. I have yet to find a case that supports that hole. So if you have a motherboard mounting hole that doesn't align with a standoff in your case, just ignore it. But I would use all of them as much as I can. And what I do is I have these little plastic standoffs from back in the 90s when I built computers. Motherboards used to require, basically they'd use 2 screws and the rest were these plastic standoffs. And they'd have a little nub on the end of them. Like, you know what, it looks like I preemptively cut off all the nubs. But let me have you point the camera just a little bit more this way. Thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little standoff in this mounting hole. It's not required, but because I have them, I might as well use them. Keeps them out of the landfill. But I wouldn't go and buy them just for this. I just happen to have them, that's all. It's a good excuse to use them. All right, now we can do our very first test fire. I mean, it really is 15 minutes of work that I've been jibber-jabbering for 2 hours to do 15 minutes of work. But I'm going to grab that Aries Game 500-watt power supply. These sell for like $35 or something on Amazon. They're super cheap. I'm going to plug in right here. And I need CPU power. A lot of people forget to hook up the CPU power cable. You know, I just built a computer and it won't turn on. The fan starts, but it won't do anything. So we'll find the connector on the power supply that says CPU on it. This one has 2. That's pretty unusual. This motherboard only needs 1. And just pick one or the other, it doesn't matter. Either one will work. Line it up, and then that locks it in. Now, for me to test fire this, I need to have a power switch. I need to be able to power it on. I recently bought this power switch from Amazon. I like that it's just flat like that. In fact, let me step around here and let me grab my glasses because I have to see the little pins that this plugs into. You'll see there's 4 connectors on here. One is the power switch, and the other is the power LED. Now for testing, you know, we don't need to have the LED on. But since I've never used the switch before, I want to see what it looks like. It looks like it's going to light up around the button. So the power switch and power LED go on the top row of pins. You will never connect these from one row to the other. You'll always stay either on the top row or on the bottom row, depending on what it is you're hooking up. The positive wire on the power LED goes on that top row of pins furthest. The first pin at the top is your positive connector. And then I need to, let's see, we have to get power to the power supply. I need a keyboard and mouse. And then I need to plug in the video to the capture card. And then we can do our first test fire and see if it boots. That goes there. Make sure the switch on the power supply is off, just for safety, just to be extra cautious. Definitely don't want to plug in anything we don't need, like, you know, a printer or anything USB other than the keyboard and mouse, because it'll be more things we have to diagnose. Now, that's a little worrisome that it fired up as soon as I plugged it in. That shouldn't have happened. That's not a good sign. So I'm going to flip that switch back to the off position. And then I need an HDMI cable. We'll plug that in. And that should be it. That's all we need for a test fire. I'm a little concerned that that just fired up without me pressing a button. Flip the switch. Does it turn on again? No. Now it's doing what it's supposed to. See my power button here? I'm going to tap that. You see it glows blue. And then I'm going to step around back over to my OBS software and turn on the capture for the HDMI input. And let's see what it does. Right now it says no signal, and we're just going to wait a second. In fact, I'll go ahead and put it on camera 1. And I'll reduce the size of the video for the HDMI input so you can see me at the same time. Now the computer fan just stopped spinning. It looks like it's just trained the RAM and CPU and restarted with those settings. And this is normal on a first boot. And it might take up to 90 seconds for your very first boot. So don't panic and don't freak out if it doesn't come on right away. Give it time to initialize. Yeah, thank you. There we have it. Okay, so what version of BIOS is this? I bet you it's way out of date. BIOS version says it's version F3. So let's go to our browser. I'll just bring up Microsoft Edge to make my life less complicated. And let me share the browser screen with you. Perfect. And we'll type in B460 HD3 BIOS. And then I'm going to click on that very first link that comes from Gigabyte. I'm going to click on the support here. Not the support up here. That's for generic Gigabyte support. Every motherboard manufacturer does this. Asus, MSI, ASRock, they have two support options, one at the very top and one on the product page. So when we hit the support here, it's for this specific product on the page. So we'll tap that and we'll look for BIOSes. We'll scroll down. It says there's been 4 BIOSes available for this. F4 is the latest from November. We'll download that. And then I'm going to extract that file to a local directory here on the streaming computer. That's what you're looking at. I'm going to grab my BIOS flash drive, plug it in. What makes this a BIOS flash drive is that it's a small capacity flash drive, only 2 gigs, and it's empty. And what I'm going to do is copy the main BIOS file, which is the biggest file that we just extracted, onto the flash drive, and it'll only take just a second to do that. Now let's go back to camera 1. And with the BIOS file copied, I can now pull the flash drive. And with that being the only file on the flash drive, there's no way for me to select the wrong file when I attempted the BIOS update. See? It's a little life hack for you. There's only one thing to pick, so you can't get it wrong. Now I've plugged that in to any USB port in the back. Just give it a minute for the BIOS to recognize it. And let's go back to full screen. And you'll see right over here, it says QFlash F8. So either clicking this or hitting the F8 button on your keyboard will take you to the QFlash. We choose Update BIOS, so we'll click once. The only storage device it can see is the flash drive because that NVMe drive is erased and has no partition and no format on it, so it can't see it. All it sees is the flash drive I plugged in and the one file that's on it. So kind of makes it super easy to not screw it up. And then I'll hit the arrow to the right. It says, are you sure you want to update the BIOS? Yes. Now it verifies that we have the right file that's compatible, and we'll also tell it to update the backup BIOS. I don't know why sometimes that option appears and sometimes it doesn't, but when it appears, I select it, then click to start. Now it says, in order to make complete update, system is going to shut down and QFlash will continue after restart. Click OK. That's pretty uncommon, but it's letting you know what to expect. You don't want to interrupt a BIOS update process, or you could brick the motherboard, and then you'd have to send it back to the manufacturer. So at this point now, it's a hands-off situation where we just patiently wait, and the system will let us know when it's done. Now it's saying no signal because the system has not yet reinitialized. And again, patience is key here. And in just a minute, hopefully, we'll see something happen. But the sure way to screw this up is to think something is wrong and then to start trying to fix it or interrupt it, and then you'll make something wrong. So I cannot emphasize how important patience is in this process. It may take a couple minutes. Shouldn't take too long though to at least get something on the screen. So that's a little bit worrying, but let's just give it a chance. You know, the very fact that it even wants to reboot for the BIOS update is pretty unusual. And I thought I had that full screen the whole time. Brian Miles contributes $2. He says, is there a difference between M.2 or NVMe? M.2 is the form factor. It's the connector. And NVMe is the communications protocol. If we say NVMe, it has to be M.2 at this time. If I say M.2 or NVMe, I'm either talking about the form factor or I'm talking about the communications protocol. Either way, calling it either thing or saying it's an M.2 NVMe, well, quite redundant, is also accurate. Now, the amount of time that this has taken is too long. It absolutely should not be taking this long. So I feel like I've been patient enough. Nothing's happening, and I don't know why. I'm going to go ahead and cut power to the board, and then we'll turn it back on. Let's see what it does now. Trevor says, with the BIOS backup, should you be able to restore the BIOS if something goes wrong? That's the whole point of having a BIOS backup. Yes. All right, it sounds like it's initializing now. Sergio says M.2 could be SATA as well. This is true. M.2 could be SATA. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that correction. System is restarting. I don't know what it's doing, but just let it do it. Hey, I got something. Now let me take it full screen, which is what I thought I did before. I have to choose a different option here. Transform and fit to screen. There it is. BIOS has been reset. Please reconfigure your BIOS as needed. Okay, that's fine. But it didn't update the BIOS. Oh, how the heck did that happen? That scares me because we were on F3 and it didn't seem to be doing anything. That is quite worrisome. I want to see what happens if I try and update the same BIOS again, because I'm very nervous about that. That was one of the strangest things I've ever seen. Press to start, and let's see if it does it right this time. That's worrisome. That means I interrupted the BIOS update. And that's why you want to make sure you give it enough time. I didn't notice the flash drive blinking or anything. That's the other thing about these older flash drives. They have the activity light on them. The newer flash drives, a lot of them don't have the activity LED, so it's hard to know if it's doing anything. And I never saw the light blinking, but apparently it did something. So now we're sitting back at this screen that says no signal, and the light on the flash drive is not blinking. So I'm quite confused about this. We'll give it a full 5 minutes just to make sure. That's really bizarre. And while we're waiting, if you have any questions for me or you would ask previously and I haven't seen it, go ahead and please ask in the chat room again, and I'll take this time now to address any questions you've got. Well, we're going to be more patient this time. Whatever just happened, I got super lucky. Yeah, I'm not seeing it blink at all. Brian Miles says, Carrie, can I be blue now? Sure, there you go. Daco contributes £2, says, thank you, love watching your live streams. Well, thank you, Daco, appreciate you. We've got 531 people watching around the world right now. Aaron Computer Tech contributes $7 and says, thanks for your great advice and God bless. And then Daco, prior to that, had contributed £1. And thank you again, Daco. And Aaron Computer Tech. Thanks for supporting the channel, guys. Okay, now the LED is completely off on the flash drive. It was on before. But like I said, I'm going to give it a full 5 minutes. We got 3 more minutes to go, so still looking for any questions I can answer for you. Oh, the system just turned off. Now it's rebooting. It turned off again. That's much better, much better. Now I know it completed. Let's see, we'll watch the corner of the screen and see if we get a BIOS screen here. There's $1 from our good friend Madi. Thanks, Madi. So it took a little over 3 minutes at that, and it still may be updating now, so we'll continue to give it some more time. I don't know why I'm not getting any video out of it. That's new. Capture card should be grabbing whatever the board's outputting. No idea why it's doing this, but it's not a really super big deal. I just don't like not knowing what's going on. We'll continue to wait out the full 5 minutes. Golden Faces says hello. Hey, welcome in. Macan says AMD is always bizarre. This is not AMD. This is an Intel system. Is this a beta BIOS? No, it is not. The beta BIOS will have from Gigabyte, it will have a letter at the end of the BIOS number. But this BIOS is only numbers with no letter at the end. So that is a final BIOS. Eugene wants to be blue too. Okay, Eugene, we'll turn you blue. There you go, my friend. We're almost at the 5-minute mark here. Mike Podekowitz contributes $5. He says, here's to the Gatorade Fund. All right. Now, I think I've waited long enough on this. This is the kind of stuff where I'm glad I'm capturing it live. I've never seen a Gigabyte board do this. I've upgraded the BIOS on many B460s, at least a dozen of them, probably more than that. And I've never witnessed that behavior. It does appear that we do have the latest BIOS last I checked. I'm going to turn it off by hitting the switch at the power supply. I'm going to pull the flash drive, and I will erase the file off of there so it'll be blank for the next time I need to update a BIOS. We'll turn this back on again. Only this time, I've got my Windows 10 installation media, and I'll plug that in right there. Like so. And we'll fire it back up. The problem with sitting on parts, as long as I've sat on this board, is that if there's something wrong with it, there's that much less warranty left on it from the manufacturer. But that just may be just a weird BIOS update thing. May not be anything harmful or worrisome, but because it's not what I expected, I remain suspicious, skeptical, concerned. Donnelly Ham says, I've been watching Carrie Holzman YouTube channel since March 2018 when I was looking for a Corsair 760T case and saw you build a computer in one. Right on. Well, we're glad you stuck around. So the machine doesn't want to boot for us for some odd reason, and it's not exhibiting any unusual behavior. Visually, everything looks like it should. There could be some incompatibility, could be with the NVMe drive, could even be with the RAM itself. So what I want to do is just try swapping the RAM out. I'm going to turn this off, make sure all the power drains out of the board. And I know this has booted with this RAM in it. However, it may be just a little on edge with regards to some compatibility or ability to communicate with the BIOS. This is, as I mentioned, the least expensive RAM I could find, and it may have an issue. I don't know. So let's just try something else. Oh, I hear this is perfect. And once again, I want to say this was David DeWitt that sent the NVMe and also sent this DDR4 Corsair Vengeance RAM that he didn't need anymore. It's 2 sticks of 8, which is exactly what we had. And this would be a great build to use this in. I wouldn't want to put used parts into a new computer, but since we're trying to build something at a $500 price point, if we're going to use a name brand like Corsair, this is more expensive memory. And if we want to keep that price point, we have to use used parts to do that if we want to use this brand. So we'll pop that in here real quick. I got to put it in the right direction. There's a 1. There's a 2. Now I'll put the switch back on and tap the power button, and let's see if it's any happier. Robert Jones contributes $2. He says, this is for Jimmy and Lyle, 1 for each. All right, well, they say thank you. LRCX in the chat room says the H460 HD3 you built for me has the H4B BIOS. I think he means F4B BIOS. Yeah, if it's working and it's fine, I just probably leave it because I don't like the way it's updating this BIOS. It's very strange. Sometimes a flash drive can prevent a motherboard from booting. So once again, I'll turn it off. I'm going to pull this flash drive out. I want to make sure my HDMI cable is fully seated. I have a pretty bad habit of being too gentle with the cables. We'll try again. Also, there could be an NVMe compatibility issue. It's pretty rare. But at this point, anything is suspect, and that's why we don't plug in anything more than just what we need. Now, interestingly, the BIOS came right up with no problem. And the only difference was I pulled the flash drive out. So let's turn this off. Let's plug the flash drive in again. We'll choose a different port. Let's go over here this time. And one more time. Hopefully, we'll get some joy. It should boot from the Windows 10 installation media. There's nothing else for it to boot from. But obviously it has to post. It has to do the power on self-test, which is that, first. If it won't do that, it's not going to boot to anything. So let's go full screen here, and you'll see me go through the standard process of installing Windows 10 and the options that I select. So all of this is fine. We'll hit Next, Install Now, and we'll go through the same thing if this were Windows 11. It's exactly the same steps. I click right here. I don't have a product key. I always do this, and I always choose the professional version because the cost difference is like $2. So I might as well give all my customers the Pro version whether or not they need it, because that's a lot cheaper than upgrading to it later. Hit Next. Agree to the license agreement. Hit Next. Custom install. I always choose custom install, and it should only see one drive. We only have one drive installed. If you're building a computer with multiple drives, I strongly advise you to not hook up anything but the main drive, so that way you don't have a long list and you've got to be careful which one you pick. If you only have one, you won't get it wrong. We're going to hit Next, and now it's going to partition that drive, format that drive, copy the Windows installation files to that drive, and then reboot and continue the installation of Windows. And then it'll reboot one more time after that, ask us a couple more questions, and after that we can plug it into the network and go to Windows Update and get our updates. And again, while we're waiting, if you have questions, please feel free to ask in the chat room. I'm going to leave this full screen for right now. I think it's full screen. It's not full screen, is it? Let me go full screen. I keep making the same mistake where when I make it full screen for me, it's not full screen for you. So let's go full screen on that. There we go. All right, let me look in the chat. Why does it? I stepped away and this is what it does. Mike Bedekowitz says, what's your opinion on downloading Windows 11 now or wait? Unless there's something specific you need that Windows 11 does that Windows 10 does not, I'd give it another year. But if you're into tinkering and toying with things and you want to play around with it, I think it's safe to use. I just don't know in depth what potential reliability or compatibility issues you might have with other hardware or software. At this point right now, for businesses, I'm telling them to wait another year. Let it have time to mature. If you're a home user and you just want to play with it, it's fine. Or if you just want it, you know, it's just an enhanced, it's visually enhanced Windows 10. It's not like they started from scratch or anything. This board, you know, I'm growing concerned about the fact that it's having trouble starting. That's not normal. And I thought, you know, maybe it was a RAM issue. We've changed the RAM. That hasn't improved it. It does seem to be related to the USB drive, however. So I'm going to go ahead and cut power here. And then I'm going to pull the flash drive out. And then I'll turn the power back on. And interestingly, it fired right up without me hitting the power button. I don't like that. Let's see if it boots up this time. Yeah, it is. Now, it's already copied all the Windows installation files off the flash drive. We don't need the flash drive anymore. After the first reboot, it's got everything it needs to complete the install. Now, let me go full screen for me so I can see these questions here. United States, yes. United States keyboard layout, yes. Secondary keyboard layout, skip. I don't have internet. I have to tell it twice. Continue with limited setup. That way I can create a local account, which I personally prefer. I'll put the username of user in here and press enter, and enter again as a blank password, so it won't ask me for a password. And the purchaser of this computer can set up their own account if they prefer to do that, or they can leave it. I leave location settings on, that way it'll set the time zone, the date and time all automatically. I don't want Cortana, so I'll click Not Now. And now it's going to finalize our installation. And once that's done, I'll plug in the Ethernet cable and we'll go to Windows Update. Aaron Computer Tech says, can I buy that motherboard power button through your Amazon page? I don't think I've added it there. I only bought this a few days ago, and this is the first chance I've had to use it. It's only like $8. You know, I might make 2 cents commission, so don't feel like you're helping me out by doing that. But I can be sure to add a link to it in my Amazon page. But I'll do that this weekend. Patrick says, maybe try a different power supply. Well, that's possible. Although I've used this power supply before and didn't have any problems. Arnold wants to know if I'll put the OLOY RAM back. I don't, it's all the same. I mean, if it were me, if this were going to be my computer, I'd rather have the name brand memory than the non-name brand memory. And since the memory was contributed to us, it helps keep me at that $500 price point even more so. Okay, let's go back to full screen on this. And what I'm going to do at this point is plug an Ethernet cable into it, and we're going to go to Windows Update. Probably going to be missing a ton of updates here. Always wait until you've created your offline account, assuming you want an offline account. Because if you have the internet plugged into it while you're installing Windows, it will force you to create or utilize a Microsoft account, which wouldn't be practical because it's not my computer. So why would I want my account info on it? Truth be told, I don't even have a Microsoft account. I couldn't sign into it if I wanted to. I'd have to create an account, which is free. And we'll go to Update and Security. And it's already updating in the background before I even click the mouse to check for updates. It started downloading updates in the background silently. Kurt Schlegel contributes $10. Hey, Kurt, thank you. We'll make sure Kurt is blue in here as well. We're going to add to the Blue Army today. John wants to know if it could be the power button making the glitches. It's possible, but not likely. Charles wants to know what motherboards I mostly prefer. All you got to do is look at the content of my channel, the video. In the videos, you'll see me using Gigabyte motherboards more than any other brand. Given my accountability and liability to the products I sell to my customers, I prefer to utilize the Gigabyte brand for price and reliability. I will sometimes use other brands, but more than any other brand on motherboards, I prefer Gigabyte, with a few exceptions. And again, if you can If you have a question and I haven't seen it, please go ahead and repost it. And while we're waiting for updates, it's a good time for me to address any of your questions. And I think I can safely make this screen a little smaller. We'll keep an eye on that. Kevin Crowley contributes $4.99. He says, happy Friday, Carrie. Hey, happy Friday, Kevin. William Grayson contributes $1. Right on, William. Thank you to Kevin and William for supporting the channel. And did I miss any other? I think I got them all. Yeah, I think I got them all. William says, I'm sorry I'm poor, Carrie. You know what? Doesn't cost any money to be nice. And, you know, that's really more important to me than money, is just be nice and be a supportive member, by being kind to other people. That's all I ask. Zvi Manor says hello from Israel. Hi, Zvi. Looking through the chat to see if there were earlier questions I might have missed. We've got 507 people watching live around the world right now. Starshine says, Carrie, what are your favorite websites for fun? I probably go to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook the most. So now it looks like the board went to, the operating system went to sleep. I'll wiggle the mouse to wake that back up. Oh no, it didn't go to sleep. It loaded a video driver, and now we're in 4K mode because everything just got super, super tiny. Let me go full screen on this on my side. I'll do it for both of us. Let's transform this to full screen. And let's take a closer look at resolution settings. Everything's so tiny. Like if it was hard for me to read before, you can only imagine being in 4K mode. I want 1920 by 1080. Better. And we're getting all these updates, so we'll let that just continue on its doing what it's doing. Put it back down in the corner for now. Bob R. just became a supporter. Right on. Hey, thanks, Bob. And Aaron Computer Tech. Right on, guys. Thanks for becoming members of the channel. And Mark Baggett as well. It says, thanks for all the great content and happy Friday. Happy Friday. Absolutely. We made it to the end of the week. Starshine says, I found a fun site called Cat Bounce where you can make cats bounce. Okay, well, you enjoy that. Dennis Mitz said, I'm considering building a computer, but my space to get the machine into my cabinet is a maximum of 8 inches and I can't use the 200R. Any suggestions? You would need to use a mini ITX. So if you look around for mini ITX builds, Or do something like an Intel Nook, or something of the Intel Nook size, form factor, but understand it's going to be very limited in expandability. Heat may be an issue, especially if you're putting it in a cabinet where there's not airflow around it. That's just not ideal. But you can buy something pre-built. I have a machine here I will be showing. Let me find it. This company asked me if I'd review this machine, and they sent it to me and asked me if I would review it next month. I don't think they want me to review it just yet, but I can show you the box. It's kind of an interesting form factor. And they're saying it's a gaming PC, but I don't know that it really has the specs for what I would call a gaming PC. But I will be reviewing this. They're not paying me anything. They just sent me the product, and they've asked me if I would review it. So I'll give it an overview, and I can tell you more about the specs and stuff when I learn about them. I don't know anything about it. Just a company I never heard of before, and it's a unique design, the likes of which I've never seen before. Could make a good multimedia computer to go in like a living room or something. It's small, and if it's not too loud, you know, it won't be an eyesore or distraction in a media room or next to a television or entertainment center. So I'll be reviewing that. I think they requested the first week of July, but I have to go back and read the emails again. I don't know why they would want to postpone it, but something like that would work for you, but you wouldn't be building it. It's already built. How's our updates coming along here? Looks like the cumulative update is downloaded 100%. Let's grab this one too. I don't see the restart now option either. It's kind of weird. But give it some time. This feels like this house is so hot. And the temperature outside is hot. And I swear I had that drink out there for what? Half an hour, and it's already warm. I guess I have to drink faster. Macam M contributes 500 RSD. 500 RSD to USD. What format is that? That's a Serbian dinar. 500 Serbian dinar equals $4.48 US dollars. Right on. Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate your contribution. I get to educate myself about world currencies. And we'll make sure you're blue in there as well. I appreciate your kindness and your support. Lana says, Carrie, you're looking red hot. Yes, please, something to drink. It's warm in here. It is warm. Samuel Kowalski says, awesome stream, Carrie. Right on. Thanks, Samuel. DMP Rack says, I have a SATA 1 terabyte solid state drive, and I have a 1 terabyte NVMe M.2 drive. I'm about to reinstall Windows. What do you recommend as far as where to install Windows and games, etc.? Well, an NVMe is your fastest drive, and so that's where I would install your operating system. As for the games, it's really up to you. Charles Abbas says, thank you for all the good advice you've given over the years and valuable learning processes and communicated with much wisdom. Warm thank you to you, Carrie. Stay blessed all the time. Well, if you say so. Thank you, though. Mike says any search on for a new vehicle. That's already done. Yeah, I've already committed to a different vehicle, and now I have to get rid of the others I've got so I can afford it. It's a little scary. It's a little scary that I have that number of vehicles, so I'm going to get rid of all of them but the one I just bought, and that's going to be my one and only car, and that's the way it's going to stay for a while. I'm too stressed out, and the last thing I need is another thing to take care of, another thing to have to maintain. And besides, I need to save my money if I'm moving to Michigan to buy a house. What did I pick for the new vehicle? It is a Lexus NX300. Bill Wicken says, what does blue mean? So when you see people in blue, that means they've become known to me. They're not just random individuals popping in, looking to cause trouble or disruption. They've shown that they are regulars, and I see them not necessarily in every video, but I see them frequently, that I start to recognize them, and I feel like I can trust them. So I turn them blue so I don't have to remember in the future if I recognize them or not, because there's a lot of viewers. And so it's my way of acknowledging to those viewers that I appreciate them and I trust them. It usually is something that's earned just through somebody becoming a regular, and while they're also regular, they're also kind and supportive to other people in the chat room. And that's what gets them blue. Bob R. with a $10 contribution said, for support of the community, and thanks for the Tech and Talk. Well, thank you, Bob R. Joe says, I'm going to stick with my 94 GMC Suburban K1500. Yeah, I wonder how much it cost you to fill the tank of gas on that thing. $200? Stealth Mode said, that's a sharp-looking car, Carrie. Yeah, I decided I don't want power. I want luxury, and I want convenience. I want to be able to move computers and boxes around, and I really can't do it in the Mustang. And that Mustang was a very costly mistake I made. So I'm going to lose money on it, which sucks, but if I hold on to it, it's only going to cost me more. So I got to cut my losses and learn my lesson. I might have a picture of the car. A picture. $50 Amazon gift card got sent to me from Roger Bell. Hey, Roger, thank you for that. Yeah, so when I sell, I'll get rid of that minivan, I'll get rid of the new Mustang. With the new Mustang, I put quite a lot of money down on it. So when I sell it, I owe less on it than it's worth. That means I'll have a little extra, but it's still a financial loss. I'll take that little extra and put it on the new car so I can pay that off that much sooner. But oh, I have to switch my camera view. There we go. So that will be the one and only vehicle. Instead of having one car for this and a van for that, that'll just be the all-around single one car. And I think it's actually going to cost me less for all the money I'm putting into the other cars with insurance and everything else. Oil changes, maintenance, tires, battery. Just get rid of those. Take all the money that I'm spending on those, put it on this one, and then work my tail off to pay it off, rather than ride out the full 60-month term. I never buy a car beyond 60 months financing. It's just too much money that you're paying in interest. It's just throwing money away. So I'm going to just take every extra dollar I've got, and I'm going to try and pay that car off as quickly as I can. Maybe might take a year, but still, it's a used car, very lightly used, still has factory warranty, and so if there are any problems with it, it'll get fixed under warranty. And if it's as reliable as people say Toyota and Lexus are, and I've never owned a Toyota or a Lexus before, I would rather spend my time doing things that earn me money than having to take a car into a shop, even if it is under warranty. It's just takes me away from my job. So, time for a new experience in life. It'll certainly be the single nicest car I have ever owned in my life, and I intend to take care of it and keep it looking good as long as I can. I don't anticipate being able to afford buying another one anytime soon. Les Stevenson said, money's not everything, Carrie. Being comfortable is. I don't want to get too soft. You know what I mean? But I kind of feel like at my age, I feel like I deserve it. Of course, I'm going to tell myself that. Who's going to say they don't deserve it? But just getting older, and the things I was looking for in a car have changed. And now I prefer to have something much easier to get in and out of. If I want to take somebody somewhere, we've got the back seat. I've never owned a four-door car in my life. I've always been against four-door cars. So, first time for everything. Robert Jones says, what is the model of the Mustang you were trading? It's a GT Premium. Barry Russ contributes $2. Thanks, Barry. Charles says, that's absolutely cool. That's a cool car, a big and warm congratulations for your new car. Thank you. Yeah, I don't show it to show off or boast. I'm like proud of myself. I did this all, obviously I have help from many of you, help from my customers, but working very hard and sacrificing other things I want so I can have that. So it's nice to be able to share my enthusiasm and have it interpreted as it's intended. It's not meant to be boasting or showing off or anything like that. Okay, the computer went to sleep again, or is it rebooting? I wasn't paying attention. Moving the mouse, nothing's happening. This board is kind of shaking my confidence a little bit. It's been acting it's a little off, and I certainly wouldn't sell it while it's behaving like this. There's something it doesn't like, and it might just be that NVMe drive for all I can tell. There's really nothing plugged into it that should justify losing video on it right now. And it's a brand new board. It was completely sealed until we just opened it today. That makes me a little nervous, but we'll fix it, whatever it is. Joe wants to know, A+ certification through a community college or Google course, what are your feelings on this? Really, it's a personal decision you have to make. The A+ certification is the same end result regardless. So I think whichever one is more appealing to you is the one you should do. Charles says, I've got an old Toyota Carina from 1989. Yeah, well, on the inside of the door of that new car, it says made in Japan. So I'm hopeful that that will be better than cars made here in the US or Mexico, where they have a lot of US manufacturers have their cars made. Yeah, this is disconcerting. So everything that's going on with this black screen. I'm going to cut the power, and then we'll turn it back on. Sarge Tech says Toyota and Lexus are the Energizer Bunny of vehicles. They keep going and going and going and going. Well, that's what I hear. I hope that that's my experience. Because, you know, that Mustang I had for 9 years was the single most reliable car I've ever owned. And I like that. I like to have a reliable car. I don't know what this board is doing. I'm starting to wonder if we've already swapped out the RAM. It's a brand new board. It's obviously going to be nothing wrong with the CPU. That's brand new. Oh, here we go. I guess maybe because it's a 10400, it's a little slower than I'm accustomed to, and I'm being impatient. Captain Blinsky says they have a great running Toyota Camry from the year 2000. Some days it drives like new. Well, it's all good news. I hope I have a similar experience. Starshine says Japanese cars in Japan are built to stand up to heat. I hope so. I hope so, because it's pretty hot out here. Okay, so back to the desktop, and you know, I hate this stupid thing, so just go to search and turn off search highlights, get rid of that junk. And I hate this thing over here. It's on news and interests, and we'll turn off right there. And we'll go back over to Windows Update. And click Install Now. Jim KJ3N says, my '07 Corolla runs fine, but it has less than 50,000 miles on it. Wow, guess you barely drive it. Bill Wickens wants to know, where would I look for a refurbished computer that's not Dell or HP or other name brands? I don't understand your question. What brand are you looking for? Mike wants to know if the Lexus is all-wheel drive. No, it is not. Captain Blinsky says, I'm looking at FJ Cruisers, damn the price, and full speed ahead. Oh, damn the price and full speed ahead. I test drove one of those when they were out, and I didn't like how it was hard to see out of it. And the big tire in the back kind of made it impossible to see behind you. I think they're sexy. I like them. They look very rugged. It has 3 windshield wipers, which I think is weird. It likes to take premium gas, which I think is weird. I know I expect that from Lexus or BMW or any European cars as well. Mercedes and Porsche, and even Volkswagens. They like that higher octane gas, which costs quite a bit more at the pump. They hold their value really well. I don't know why Toyota stopped making them. I bet if Toyota made those again, they'd have no problem selling them. But it could be a fuel emissions thing. Okay, that installed much faster. Now we're cooking with gas here. See if everything's going to work better now. Cerise says, those 3 wipers really work, though. It doesn't make sense until you drive one in the rain. Yeah, we get rain about 4 days a year out here, so not a lot of opportunity to wait for that test drive. Okay, back at the desktop. And once again, we'll go back to Windows Update. So it's getting that .NET cumulative update, and that one shouldn't take very long. Chris Johnson says, good day, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me in. I'm grateful to be here. Well, it's great to have you here, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Joe says vehicles with premium gas might be able to go to mid-grade, might be able to go regular with added seafoam treatment additive. You don't need to put any additive. Cars today are electronically controlled by the computer, and they will automatically retard the timing on the car, regardless if you're putting in premium or not. It may result in less horsepower, it may result in gas mileage being reduced, but it won't cause any harm to the engine. The computer automatically adjusts the timing to compensate from pre-detonation or knocking. And the premium gas is all that does is it allows for the car to have a higher compression ratio. So you get a bigger bang, if you will, each time that the gasoline ignites in the cylinder. It's a larger compression ratio. And the lower the octane, the gas may pre-detonate, creating a knocking sound. But today's cars, going back even 15 years, have knock sensors and are computer controlled and will auto adjust. I'm told, however, over a period of time, if that's all you do is put the cheap gas in it, the the low octane gas, that having the engine retarded for a period of time, an extended period of time, can, I'm told, damage the engine. I'm not exactly sure how. Sarge Tech 2 says, do not use seafoam in modern cars. Well, you know what? It's a Lexus. It's new. I'm not putting any additives in anything. It's just going to get the premium gas when it needs it, when it needs gas, and any service will be done by the dealer. That's it. I'm not going to modify the car in any way. Looks like this wants to restart again. Whoops, didn't mean to click that. There we go, restart. Chris Johnson said, I'm on a few other forums on YouTube, and I've never seen the warm welcome that I do here. That is how we roll. So thank you for noticing. What year is the Lexus? It's a 21. So it's a lightly used car, driven by a little old lady from Pasadena, maybe, who barely drove it, very low miles. I really wanted a V6, but the V6s they had, I didn't care for them. They had like some RXs, and I didn't like the interiors and the colors. They only had 3. So I didn't even think I was going to buy a car that day. But this one just clicked with me. All right, so we've got all of our updates in. Let me run the optimization tool, Uncle Carrie's optimization tool. And we'll load VLC on here as well. So just install VLC right off the flash drive. And while that's loading, we'll copy my Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 optimizer over to the desktop. I prefer to run this off the desktop. Click Finish, Continue, Close, double click on the optimizer, yes. We'll go up here to options and check for any updates to the optimizer. It says no updates are available. All of the boxes are checked based on how it looks at the configuration of your computer and sees which optimizations it recommends. So all you have to do is hit apply. You will see a lot of access denied during the turning off of the indexing feature. That's normal and to be expected. It makes some other optimizations and then wants to restart for those optimizations to take effect. Now that tool is available for purchase. It's super cheap, and just look down in the video notes for the link that'll take you there. Nothing the tool is doing isn't anything you couldn't do manually, but it's just it's a list of stuff. So that just gets it done in seconds instead of 20 minutes or whatever it would take to do it all by hand. And because I build so many computers, that gets old real quick. It has not been designed for Windows 11, and I wouldn't recommend it on Windows 11. I don't think it'll cause any harm, but I'm not quite sure the changes it's making affect Windows 11 in the same way. I have to do the research on that, and when time permits, we'll look into it. But for right now, it's a Windows 10 optimization tool, not a Windows 11 optimization tool. Some people have used it on Windows 11 and said it works fine. One person said it didn't. I don't know. I'm not promoting it as a Windows 11 tool. We keep getting back to this restart where it won't reboot when the flash drive is in it. It's very strange. Very strange. So I guess I'll turn it off and unplug the flash drive. It'll fire back up. That's weird. I'm growing suspicious of this NVMe drive. Catherine Anna Hauserman said, I have no issues so far with your Windows 10 optimization tool on Windows 11. I appreciate the feedback. I just don't know how much it's benefiting Windows 11. Like, I know for a fact what it benefits on Windows 10, but I'd have to do some research and testing. Okay, so let's drop this in the case. Let me go ahead and shut this down. I'll just tap the power button. That'll cycle it down. And we'll try this new Corsair 110Q. I guess I can turn that little screen off down there. Okay. Any other questions for me? Dave says hello from Colorado. Welcome in, Dave. I gotta tell you, this little 8-pin CPU power cable just kind of fell out. Maybe I didn't have this all the way in. Not me, I would never do that. That was the other Carrie. It's an imposter running around. All you other Carries are just imitating. That sounded better in my head. Okay, this is the Corsair 110Q. This was something I was looking at as an alternative to the 200R in that it has no case windows, no RGB. You could still put an optical drive in it. It's got one bay, which is one more than most new cases have these days. It's all black, so it's not going to age like a high school yearbook photo, the way that these RGB systems people are building today are going to look back at 10, 15 years from now. And friends are going to ask, what were you thinking when you put that gaudy thing together? I just don't think those computers were going to age well. With a system like this, it's timeless. Wow, Corsair really put those on tight. And it's got sound dampening material in the case, panels, and it's got the screws captive. They don't come out of the panels. Let me bring this a little closer and I'll show you. So it's got the sound dampening material. That's fantastic. And you'll see right behind the CPU socket on the other panel right here, the sound dampening materials cut around that to make sure that there's no contact made and that there's room for any backplate or support plate back there that isn't going to hit the back of the panel. So that is a good design, very well thought out. Happy with that. Mostly looks like a Corsair 200R. On the top, we've got two USB 3s. That is perfect. We've got a single jack here for both microphone and headphone, so like a headset, for example. We have a reset switch. We have a power button and power LED, but I don't see a hard drive LED on here for some reason. Does it not have a hard drive LED? It does not. Okay, well, I guess who needs to know if your hard drive is reading or writing? Who cares, right? It's just a critically important LED. We don't need that. This is the box of mounting hardware. So if we want to put in any hardware, motherboard or drives, the screws are included with the case. Looks like we've got room for two 2.5-inch solid state drives, two 3.5-inch drives with the drive sleds down here on the bottom. And I'm assuming the cage can come out if you want it to. It looks like it could host a liquid cooler up here on the front. It comes with one fan on the back, no fan on the front, whereas the Corsair 200R does have the extra fan. And looks like we can get a full-size board in here. We have no power supply shroud, but that's not important because we don't have a glass panel. No one's going to see it anyway. And then up here is your space to put your optical drive. And it's kind of blocked. You can't really see. You have to, I guess, you're going to put the optical drive in from the front anyway, but hooking up the cabling, you know, this whole piece kind of blocks your view of that. So that might be a little bit of a challenge, but not too difficult. So let's go ahead and put the board in. Start with the I/O shield. That looks good. Oh, there's some sound dampening material up on the top too. So you definitely wouldn't be putting a liquid cooler at the top, but you couldn't if you wanted to anyway because the optical drive tray is there. But certainly looks like a liquid cooler would easily fit on the front. I don't see any obstacles to that. Yes, there are screws at the bottom here to remove the hard disk cage. So if you're not going to use a hard drive, you can free that space up for something else. You've got your filter down here to filter the air going into the power supply. If your computer has one of these, you definitely want to check that about every 6 months and clean it up. And then right up here where our umbilical cabling is, that's going to get in the way of the motherboard install, so I have to get this out of the way right now. Just pull that through and get it out of the way. This seems like a very viable alternative to the 200R. sure all the standoffs are in the right place. This is a standard ATX motherboard with the standard mounting holes, except for that one I put the standoff, that little plastic standoff in. That's just a weird Gigabyte idiosyncrasy. Okay, that looks good. Make sure I haven't snagged any of the grounding straps. Everything is free and clear. I'll go to the box of hardware. And in this box, as I mentioned, it'll contain all of the screws you need for mounting any hardware in the case. You don't want to use screws from a different case. So you always want to hold on to these screws, whatever is left over, for anything that you might want to upgrade or change in the future. There's no kind of standard in the industry. Even amongst the same case manufacturers, one case may use one kind of screw, and a different case from the same manufacturer may use an entirely different screw for mounting the board. We've got a little bag of washers for some reason. We got one extra standoff, I guess, for some reason. And then we have extra fan screws, motherboard mounting screws, and then these really fine, smaller screws are for mounting your DVD drive or a 2.5-inch solid state drive. Andy wants to know if I would put a fan on the front of the case, only if I had a GPU to cool down. Otherwise, it's only going to drag in more dust and dirt and be a point of failure at some point. The customer's going to say, hey, my computer's making a weird sound. It's going to be a fan. So I don't put on fans where they're not necessary. If we did have a GPU in there, discrete GPU, then I would put the fan in there just to blow a layer over it. Even on the 200R, I do not hook up the front fans unless there's a graphics card. It's only going to be 5 screws, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, 1 in the middle. Even though there's 3 mounting holes in the middle of the motherboard, across the middle. The very center one is for a post that sticks up from the case to keep the board. Oh, I take it back. That one does take a screw. My bad. So we're going to use 6 screws total. 2 on the top, 2 in the middle. That third one that's in that middle row is the standoff. But there's no support for that mounting point on the Corsair cases. I don't know why Gigabyte does that. Nice clean install. We've got our front port umbilicals that I can run up right there. And let me step around. Again, no hard drive power LED, so just we have the power LED for the system, but not for the drive. So that goes on the first 2 pins on the top row, starting from the left. The reset switch goes on the next 2 pins below, with the power switch going directly above that on the next 2 pins next to the power switch. If we had a hard drive LED, that would go below the power LED with the positive cable always to the edge of the connector. Then USB 3.0, that's going to go right here. That is a tight fit. And then finally we have our audio connector for the front port audio connector. And we want to run that It's going to be on the motherboard back around here, so we'll run that as far over to that side as we can. Oh, well, it's nothing but a big open space there, Carrie. And we'll put that connector on, like so. Now we just need to add the power supply, hook up the 2 power connectors. We can hook up this fan. I'll cable manage it later, but that's a fan connector way up at the top left corner here. And it's dark in there. I can barely see it. So there's no way you at home can see this. And for the power supply, do I want to use this Aries game? I should probably try something different just in case, right? Just because of those weird booting examples. Let's do this EVGA 500 watt. This is brand new in a box. I like these power supplies. I've been using them a lot over the years. They've been very reliable. They're budget friendly. But if a customer wants to put a GPU in here, you know, you could easily turn this into a gaming computer simply by buying a graphics card. But you definitely want to put a more powerful power supply in, at least 750 watts. And then you'd have a gaming PC. Bob R. wants to know, why are some computer cases leaving the hard drive and power LEDs out? I don't know. If you find out, please let me know. Winston Liu contributes 10 Canadian dollars and says the CF35 Lightning II of Canada is watching from Van City of Canada. And I don't know how to speak French. But thank you, Winston. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. Unboxing here so you can see the way these are packaged. Just move this up and out of the way for a minute. Our instructions. This little cardboard opens up, and taped to the inside are the mounting screws. Even though I said the screws come with the case, I prefer to use the screws that come with the power supply as long as they color match. Nothing wrong with having some extra screws regarding anything proprietary in the case where they're not, like I said, the screws are going to be differing from one manufacturer to another, or even one model of case to another. Of course, we have our power cable. And usually what I do with this is I'll put it in the empty motherboard box along with any documentation and leftover screws, so that the owner of the computer will have it to upgrade in the years ahead when they want to upgrade. So I can see how that hard drive cage really gets in the way. What I want to do is move that over. It looks like it slides to the right about an inch. So we'll lay this flat and we'll loosen those screws on the bottom and see if it slides. It looks like this side of it slides, and then this side of it is a secured screw. So what we'll do is we'll take those completely out. Start with that. Then we just loosen these. 1, 2. And this should, if I loosen it, something's still holding it in place. Let me take another look. So apparently it's got an additional screw right there. So we'll take that completely out and set it with the others. You definitely want to put the same screws in that you took out. Push that all the way to the front. And And just have to move it slightly to get the holes to line up. Go underneath. And those holes have also lined up for us. So that's a little extra labor over the 200R that I would not want to have to do 25 times for a customer who's ordering 25 computers. That would just add quite a bit to the labor. But on just one, it's not a big deal. It does kind of block this tray. It will eventually come out, but it's not very well thought out. Even the top one, it's going to be tight. Very strange that it's that tight. I mean, what's the point of having it in there if you can't get the trays in and out? Wow. All right. Well, for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll wait till I get the power supply in. Then I'll see if I can move it back, maybe just one notch to the right. I don't know. It looked like it was in the middle position before, but maybe it was all the way at the end position, and I've got it at the opposite end. And of course, if you took it out to put your drives in, and you wanted to keep it there, it's more labor to take it all out just to get a drive in and out. The whole point of those sleds is to make that whole process faster, more efficient. Oops. Unlike the 200R, there's no extra support here for the power supply to get held under. That's a little disappointing, knowing it's these really shallow screws that hold the entire weight of the power supply. So Corsair kind of dropped the ball on that from my perspective. I would have liked to have seen that additional support that I'm accustomed to on most computers, but let alone the 200R. And this cage, it shouldn't move that far to the right where you can't get the tray out. So a couple of dings on the 110Q on that. Okay, and now we'll just hook up power to the board and see if it fires up. Maybe it'll be happier with this power supply, or maybe I'll make sure I have the cable connector fully seated, more so than I did last time, and see if it repeats the same finickiness that it was exhibiting there a few minutes ago. Come on now. Well, that power supply cable just barely reaches. And then the CPU power cable. I just want to get these other cables untangled and out of the way. There, now I heard the second one click. Okay. I'm just going to take this excess cable from the power supply and I'm just going to wrap them up so they don't drag across my bench and knock everything onto the floor. And let's hook it all back up and see if it's happier. Let's see. HDMI. Ethernet. Power. And what I do with the dongle for the keyboard and the mouse. There it is. Okay, here we go, folks. Fire it up. Power light comes on. Fans are turning. Let's go to the HDMI input and see what happens. Ooh, that was quick. All right. So essentially, I've got to activate Windows. I wonder if the Samsung Magician would work on here. I might try that. I'll go through removing some unnecessary apps that are installed by default on Windows 10. I think that's it. I'll make sure that whatever that boot issue is, I'm going to look into that and double check the BIOS battery since the board's been sitting a while. When the board's powered off with no power hooked up, it'll drain that BIOS battery much, much faster than just having a computer turned off. Because even with it turned off, when there's power plugged in, it's providing the power that the backup BIOS, the battery rather, provides when there's zero power. So if a board sits a long time, like on a shelf, those batteries will go completely dead in no time. If you keep it plugged in, even if the computer's off, the batteries last, 5 to 8 years. Good news is the batteries are cheap, it's easy to check, and that could be a symptom. Let me go full screen on this on my side, and we'll just double check we've got all the updates. I mean, the system's whisper quiet with the panels off, so it's obviously only going to be quieter. If somebody's interested in purchasing the machine from me, just reach out to my email address. Starshine says, Carrie, I wish I lived near you. I'd offer to help out every video. Well, that's kind, but I've created this mess. I've got to get myself out of it. It'll be good for my soul for me to handle it and not offload it onto anybody else. William Lynn asks, if a website redirects me to a fake scammer site, is my computer or my network going to be hacked? I can't read the future. I don't know what's going to happen. But just because you're redirected, I wouldn't freak out. If you're always being redirected, you might want to scan your computer with something like Malwarebytes or something like that, just to make sure that you don't have an infection on the machine. But redirections in and of themselves are not typically viruses. And they're just annoyances is what they are. I wouldn't worry about it. Like I said, unless it happens all the time, in which case you might have something installed on the computer that's doing that. David wants to know what my email address is. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't share that with you on this video, did I? Let's see. That right there is the email address. That's how you can reach me for business inquiries only. Other emails will not be responded to. Where'd my camera go? There I am. Okay, so that's the email address. You can always rewind this video and pause it on that screen if you need it on the screen longer. I'm going to put these extra screws in this little bag that has the standoff so I don't lose them. Charles said, someone told me that Seasonic is building the inside of Corsair RM power supplies. That might be true. Seasonic does make power supplies for multiple manufacturers. But it's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. Your warranty and support come from the manufacturer who you bought it from. The internal workings and politics of who manufactures it for them, mostly irrelevant. Even if Seasonic makes it, they likely don't use the same components. Like if we took a Seasonic power supply and a Corsair power supply that was made by Seasonic and just looked at the components, there would likely be a difference. The Seasonics are going to cost more, not because of the name, but because they're using more expensive components in them. And they aren't likely going to sell the exact same components off to another manufacturer. It's very unlikely. So at the end of the day, that's irrelevant. It's little more than trivia. I'll take all the extra screws here. We'll put them in the motherboard box. And we've got these zip ties, which I will be using later for the cable management. Got to save this cap. If you ever have to send the board in for warranty, you've got to take the CPU out, and you cannot leave the socket exposed. Your warranty will be unaccepted. And a contribution just comes in from I don't know, it won't show me. Bryant Burns with $10. Thank you, Bryant. Michael Dane says, Carrie, whoever said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results has never obviously had to reboot a computer. Alistair said, I've got an MSI B450 Tomahawk Max motherboard with a Ryzen 3 2200G CPU. What can I upgrade the CPU to on this board? You simply go to MSI's website in the support section for that board, and it'll show you the compatible CPUs. Here, I'll show you. If we bring up a browser, and I will turn on the screen sharing setting here on OBS. And you have an MSI Tomahawk, what did you say it was? Max, Tomahawk Max. The first link should take us to MSI. This will be the product page for the board you purchased. You go over to support. I guess it's going to make me click accept. Go over to support here, and it says compatibility. And here, this is a list of CPUs that you can upgrade to, and there's 10 pages of them. Let's show 50 at a time. And this is true of all motherboards from MSI or ASRock or Asus, Gigabyte. And this shows you all of the processors, and there's 3 pages when we list 50 per page. So that's 100, and then whatever the remainder is. So about 106 different CPUs that you can, that you have as options that you can upgrade to on your board. And that's how you can tell. It's super easy. Just be sure you have the latest BIOS before you take your old CPU out, or you may not be able to boot with a new CPU until the BIOS is updated. Charles M. says, thanks again for the valuable and most practical advice. Much appreciated. Well, thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your participation in the chat. We're glad to have you. Blake Gardner says a $90 case is too expensive. Oh, don't worry. It's only going to get more expensive. Probably next year, you're going to say a $90 case is a bargain. Not to mention living in a pandemic. A lot of people still have this pre-pandemic shopping attitude. Things have changed. Everything's more money. Groceries are more money. A lot of things are sold out. It's taking a long time for stocks to be replenished. And it's going to get to a point where you're going to be glad you can get something regardless of the price. So, Chris's Channel of Technology with a $1.99 said, I contributed earlier as well. Oh, did I miss it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, you contributed $1.99 and said that I need to yell smoke test. Sinister21 contributed $1.99, says, greetings from Chicago, Galaga Day 4, can't stop. He recently bought a Galaga upright arcade machine and he's been playing it every day. Well, keep practicing and maybe one day you could beat me. That's not funny.
It is funny.
Kick your butt at that game. Kick everybody's butt.
No way.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I know what I'm talking about.
Break out my quarter scale replica. Wow, this thing's dusty. Hey, the battery's still got a charge though. Got to get my microfiber cloth and wipe that dust off of there. That is blasphemous to have dust on a Galaga machine. That's just wrong. Put a quarter in. Start the game. Ooh, this is configured with 5 guys. Sweet. Yeah, it's an exact replica, quarter size. USB charger. Volume control. Sinister contributes $1.99. He says, challenge accepted, youngster. Youngster? Youngster, please. If you were older than me when this game came out, you won't have the dexterity that I have. I think that's going to wrap up today's video, guys. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit more testing on this just to make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to before I sell it to anybody. If you're interested in it, do reach out to my email address. You have to be in the United States. What else? Thanks to everybody who contributed during today's live stream. A special shout out, of course, to my good friend Peter Laycock, as well as the other contributions and contributors from the Amazon gift cards. And we'll check just one more time, see if I've missed anything. It's 111 degrees outside. Oh, Barry Klein contributes a $25 Amazon gift card. Says, good evening, Carrie. Here's tonight's Tech Busker tip jar contribution. And Robert Sierra, I see you're inquiring about the case. It's going to sell for $500, or the whole computer, with Windows 10 Pro activated, of course. And thank you to Roger Bell. Thank you to Gary Boyd. Thank you to Don Dry. Thank you to David McGurran. Thank you to Colin Longstaff, and to Luke Greenia for your support and contributions. And then in the live chat during today's broadcast, we've had contributions from Sinister21. Bebo just contributed $3. Chris's Channel of Technology with your couple contributions there. Thank you. Bryant Burns and Daco, Winston Liu, Tom K, Barry Russ, Aiden, or is it Eldon Driver, Bob R, Macon M, Mark Baggett, Aaron at Computer Tech. There's another from Bob R. Oh, Bob became a member, right on. William Grayson, Kevin Crowley, Kurt Schlegel, Robert Jones, Mike Podekowitz, Madi Yoel, Daco, Brian Miles, Aaron Computer Tech and Daco again, Rain One Full, we just call him Ryan, Xrod 666, who became a supporter, Wojciech Warzal, there's another from Madi, Prasoon Suresh, another one from Madi, Mark Gaines, and Mark Gaines also became a supporter, became a member, Larry Wood, Robert Katnya, Richard Angeline, Davis Parsons with that $50 contribution, Roy Hale, who became a member, and of course, my good friends John Jack Wilson, Ross Whitehead, Jose Estacio Rivera. Who am I forgetting? Feel like I'm forgetting somebody. I don't do that on purpose, so I hope I don't upset anybody if I forget to mention your name. But thank you so much for continuing to support the channel. It's kind of a fun discussion today. An interesting behavior from this build. I'm gonna just I'll run memtest 86 on it for about 2 hours, make sure that it's happy with the RAM, and I'll go in and optimize the BIOS a little bit just by choosing load optimized settings. Maybe I'll turn XMP on. Little things like that. I'll turn off the PTT option so it'll say it's not Windows 11 compatible. This will prevent Windows 11 from sneaking on if Microsoft decides to do that. So that way, when you buy the system and you get it home and it says that it's not compatible with Windows 11, all you have to do is go in the BIOS and make that change, and then it will be compatible with Windows 11. And it's done that way so you don't get any surprises. You're in control to decide when you're ready for Windows 11, it's fully compatible. Or for that matter, if you want me to put Windows 11 on it before I ship it, I'm happy to. Terry Trina contributes $10 and says, thanks, Carrie, for your expertise. Right on, Terry, thank you. We'll make sure you're blue in here as well. Ronnie Kravitz says, aloha, Carrie. It's great to see you again. I miss both you, your dogs, and all the guys in the chat room. Hope you're enjoying living in Hawaii there, and hope you're doing well. A shout out to Nick Poverman. We're told was in a car accident and is in the hospital. Hope you're healing well and doing better. And I think I got everything. I hope. Thanks again for watching. I will see you all again. Planning to be back on Monday. I hope you'll join me then. Until then, bye for now.